My sister ruined my engagement dinner by accusing my fiancé of cheating without proof. Now, I exposed her new fiancé's deceit at her wedding. My engagement dinner was ruined by my sister. I ruined her nuptials. Although my sister Rachel and I were never best friends, we got along well as children. She had to be first at everything and was 4 years older. They were the first to drive, graduate, obtain a job, and do other typical sibling things. I worked for myself, saved money, attended a community college while working at a veterinary clinic, and eventually earned my accounting degree. On our parents' expense, Rachel attended college right away, and earned a marketing degree that she never utilized. Rachel developed strong ideas about everything when we started dating Ethan. He was too short. His truck was too old, and his position at the fire department wasn't renowned enough. She dated men for no more than 3 weeks before they abandoned her. After 3 years, Ethan and I moved in together, and Rachel unexpectedly came to look around. Claimed the kitchen was outdated, and the neighborhood was dubious. We recently remodeled the kitchen and lived in a lovely suburb. I was so excited that I called Rachel first when Ethan proposed on our 4th anniversary at the beach where we first met. After congratulating me, she inquired about my pregnancy. She expressed amazement that Ethan would commit without a cause when I told her no. I should have realized she would try anything at that point. We decided to have my favorite Italian restaurant for a small engagement meal. Maybe 25 people. Just family and close friends. Despite the fact that toasts are typically given at weddings, Rachel insisted on making one. My mother found it adorable. Halfway through dinner, Rachel got up and began discussing the importance of honesty and trust in marriage while holding her wine glass. Then she let it fall. Said that she didn't feel appropriate to celebrate after seeing Ethan in a bar last month, looking extremely comfortable with a blonde. The whole table fell silent. Ethan's mother let go of her fork. My father's face flushed. Ethan claimed he hadn't visited a pub in months, and appeared utterly perplexed. Rachel reiterated that she had pictures. She claimed to have erased them to keep me safe when others asked to view them. In fact, my cousin Emma stated Rachel was full of it while laughing aloud. Rachel broke down in tears as she explained that no one ever trusted her and that she was only watching out for me. Ethan took out his phone and displayed his location history to everyone, demonstrating that he had spent every night of that month, either at home or at work. Perhaps she mistyped the dates, Rachel said. Everyone was uncomfortable when the supper finished early. Rachel acknowledged in the parking lot that she made it up because she thought Ethan was concealing something. Just vibes, no proof. Rachel said that I was overreacting, and that she was fulfilling her sisterly duty when my mom forced her to apologize. I entirely stopped communicating with her, because Rachel continued to take longer breaks to flirt with the man at the phone repair kiosk. She lost her job at the mall 4 months later. She could remain with us for a few weeks, but she was crying over rent when she called. No, I replied. She said that I was destroying our relationship for no reason. I ended the call. I refused to forgive her despite persuasion from my parents. Then an intriguing event occurred. Chris, the new person Rachel started dating, stayed with her. They got engaged in less than 8 months. She talked a lot about how she discovered her soulmate and how her relationship was ideal. Organized this extravagant wedding that she was unable to pay for. Our parents gave her $12,000 when she asked for money. Our grandparents contributed an additional $6,000 when we asked them. It was still insufficient for her ideal location. I became petty at that point. You see, my veterinary practice was where Chris's ex-girlfriend Megan worked. She brought up Rachel's marriage to her ex during a lunch, even though we had never really discussed him before. How did that end? I wondered. Megan claimed to have receipts, real receipts, text messages, pictures, and even footage from the security cameras at his apartment building, which proved that Chris had cheated on her with 3 separate women over the course of 2 years. Chris continued to converse with one of them. I invited Megan to go out for drinks with my cousin Emma, who had called Rachel out at my dinner, but I didn't take any concrete action based on this information. Emma loved drama and was a loud talker. Everyone in our extended family was aware of Chris's past within a week. People began turning down the wedding invitation, but no one spoke to Rachel directly. That weekend, her maid of honor unexpectedly had a work trip. Her college pals recalled previous obligations. Our grandparents even hinted that they might be on the road. In a panic, Rachel requested me to be her maid of honor because her first option had failed. Sweetly, I consented. For the following 2 months, I was the ideal sister. Arranged a fantastic bachelorette celebration, assisted with decorating, and attended dress fittings. Never once was Chris's past brought up. The day of the wedding arrived. Now available on Spotify, is Requested Reds. See the link in the comments or description. As I saw Rachel and Chris exchange vows in front of everyone, I held Rachel's bouquet at the altar. I was afraid that people might hear how loudly my heart was pounding. The officiant went over all of the customary wedding topics, such as commitment and love. When he reached the objections section, I remained motionless. Since everyone was aware of the engagement dinner situation, a few people in the crowd turned to stare at me. I simply grinned while glancing down at the flowers. I wasn't going to get up and cause a scene like I did in a movie. That was nothing compared to what I had planned. I performed my part flawlessly, and the ceremony continued. When Rachel turned around, I fixed her train, gave her the bouquet at the appropriate time, and grinned for every picture. No one knew what was about to happen. As the bridal party took photos, guests migrated to the reception room as the cocktail hour began. I found the wedding coordinator beside the bar after excusing myself. She was looking at something on her clipboard. With my biggest smile, I approached her and informed her that Rachel had a specific request that she had neglected to mention. Because brides typically remember to discuss things on their wedding day, the coordinator appeared perplexed. I clarified that Rachel requested a romantic surprise slideshow for Chris at the reception. Why didn't Rachel tell her directly? She questioned. I mentioned that Rachel was afraid that if she had to explain anything, she might become overly emotional and destroy the surprise. I took out the USB drive I had prepared, because the coordinator still appeared uncertain, informed her that everything was prepared, and only needed to be added prior to the first dance. She accepted it and promised to check with the AV specialist. Before she could ask any more questions, I thanked her and turned to go. Next, I located the photographer. He was using his camera close to the entrance to review photographs. The identical narrative regarding Rachel's unexpected slideshow was utilized by me. Since photographers don't typically deal with reception-related issues, he appeared less worried than the organizer, but I wanted to make sure he was aware of it, so he could record Rachel's response. Told him that we would want those pictures, and that Rachel would be very moved. I'll set up near the head table, he replied, nodding. Excellent. With all the decorations Rachel had been worrying about for months, the reception hall looked stunning. There are round tables with gold centerpieces and white tablecloths, string lights hanging from the ceiling, and a huge cake in the corner that costs more than my rent each month. Dinner service began when everyone had found a seat. Between Ethan and one of Rachel's bridesmaids, I took a seat at the head table. Under the table, Ethan squeezed my hand and inquired about my well-being. I assured him that I was all right. He appeared relieved, likely anticipating my annoyance at being forced to attend after the engagement dinner. If only he were aware. People were eating and conversing during dinner, and it went well. The toasts followed. Chris's best man started off by sharing a humorous story about college. It was then my time. I raised my glass of champagne and turned to face Rachel. She seemed very grateful that I was there to support her, as seen by the genuine tears in her eyes as she smiled at me. I began discussing sisterhood and how, as children, we had experienced everything together. Claimed that sisters are the ones who know each other the best. That despite our efforts to conceal things, we are able to see each other for who we really are. Rachel was using a handkerchief to dab at her eyes while nodding. I discussed honesty and trust in marriage. How crucial it is to truly understand the person you plan to marry. I saw the irony, but no one else did. Everyone applauded when I lifted my glass. Thank you, Rachel whispered in my ear, as she stood up and gave me a hard hug. I gave her a hug in return and took a seat. Ethan asked again if I was all right because I appeared tense, and he leaned over and remarked, "That was a beautiful speech." I explained to him that I was simply worn out from organizing the wedding. "We could leave early if I wanted to," he said, squeezing my hand. Telling him that I wanted to stay for the first dance at the very least, I shook my head. He kissed my cheek and grinned. Had no notion what was going to take place. Before the first dance, the DJ declared that it was time for a special presentation. Ethan looked at me as if he didn't know who I was, claimed to have protected her by telling her in private, avoiding embarrassing her in front of 100 people, ruining her wedding, and not using her suffering as payback for what she had done months prior. He merely shook his head when I attempted to protest, and walked away after saying he needed a minute. Everything had come apart in the reception hall. Small groups of guests were departing while whispering to one another. A few were in tears. Near the bar, Chris had his groomsmen all around him. Could hear him attempting to defend himself, by claiming that the communications were outdated or misinterpreted. No one was purchasing it. Rachel refused to leave the bridal suite, after locking herself inside. One by one, the bridesmaids started rapping on the door. The wedding coordinator appeared disoriented, unsure of how to proceed with the remainder of the event. The cake remained undisturbed. The DJ had prepared his gear. In the parking lot, my mother discovered me. She approached me directly and gave me a forceful slap across the face. Never in my life had I saw her strike someone. She told me that what I had done was unacceptable, and that I was harsh and callous. She replied she didn't care when I tried to explain that Chris had cheated. Claimed that my approach was incorrect, even if everything in that slideshow was accurate. That I ruined my sister's wedding out of vengeance. That I was cruel and nasty, and that she felt ashamed of me. When Ethan returned, he announced our departure. In total stillness, we climbed into his pickup and headed home. He refused to look at me. Throughout the entire journey, his jaw was clenched. He immediately went to the guest bedroom as soon as we came home. Good night was not said. Remained silent. I simply shut the door. With all the lights off, I sat by myself in the kitchen. My phone was constantly ringing with texts from family members accusing me of being evil and insane. Stating that I ruined Rachel's life out of resentment, that what I did was worse than anything Rachel had ever done to me, that I was vindictive and cruel, and that they didn't want anything to do with me. I could still hear my phone buzzing even with the face down. I anticipated feeling pleased about my actions. I anticipated feeling as though I had tied the score. Rather, I felt unsteady and hollow. Around 7 in the morning, Ethan emerged from the guest bedroom. I had not slept at all. He sat at the kitchen table opposite me, making coffee. Claimed that he had been thinking about what I had done all night, and that it had shown him something frightening about my personality. He wasn't certain he wanted to marry a woman who could organize such a degree of public humiliation. After what Rachel did at our engagement meal, I attempted to make the case that she deserved it. 2 wrongs don't make a right, Ethan said. That while Rachel's actions were horrible, mine were far worse. At a dinner, she lied once. In front of everyone she knew, I ruined her wedding. He claimed he needed time to reflect on our connection and if he could put his trust in someone who could exact such retribution. Ethan slept in the guest bedroom for 3 days, while I went about my duties, as if I were a robot. Every time my phone buzzed, I knew it was a family member telling me how awful I was, so I kept it face down on my desk. During my lunch break, Emma called, and I nearly didn't pick up. She spoke in a tremulous, tearful voice. She informed me that Megan was a complete wreck, and that she had been phoning Emma every night to express her disgust over what had transpired. Megan believed that I would use the knowledge to privately warn Rachel. Perhaps I would even take her aside before to the wedding, and present her with the evidence so she could decide for herself. Rather, I made it into a huge spectacle that ruined Rachel in front of everyone. Emma reported that Megan insisted that she only wanted Rachel to know the truth about Chris and that she never intended for things to turn out that way. Emma then began to cry more and said how awful she felt as well. She said that she loves drama and had a big mouth. But she never imagined that circulating rumors about Chris would result in what I did. Family members were now accusing her of being involved in everything, and claiming that she assisted me in ruining Rachel's wedding. Emma just started crying, and claimed she had to leave when I attempted to explain that it wasn't her fault and that I had made my own decisions. That night, when I was looking at leftover Chinese cuisine that I couldn't eat, my mother called. Unlike her usual friendly tone, her speech was flat and icy. She informed me that since the wedding day, Rachel had not left her flat, simply remained indoors with the drapes drawn and didn't answer any calls or texts outside of Mom's. Chris left his key on the counter, went to get his belongings while Rachel was locked in the bathroom, and moved out that same evening. On their Hawaiian honeymoon, they lost all of their deposits. They were going to move into a new apartment together, but they lost the deposit and the first month's rent. Despite what transpired, according to Mom, the landlord refused to return any of it. In addition to being upset by Chris's infidelity, Rachel was even more devastated by my humiliation of her, which her own sister inflicted on her in front of everyone she knew. When Mom mentioned that numerous family members had completely ceased communicating with her and Dad as a result of what I did, her voice broke. My uncle and aunt weren't picking up the phone. My grandparents claimed they needed distance because their daughter was ruthless enough to ruin her sister's wedding. Mom interrupted me as I was trying to explain that Chris was cheating, claimed that Chris' actions were irrelevant. It was worse what I did. She hung up after that. 2 days after that, Ethan's mother called. My stomach fell when I saw her name on my phone because Ethan's mother was usually pleasant and inviting to me. She began speaking in a soft voice, which in some way made things worse. She acknowledged that I was offended by Rachel's actions during our engagement meal, and that her remarks were cruel and inappropriate. However, my reaction was completely out of proportion. She was afraid of how vicious it was. She claimed that Ethan had been living with James and calling her every night to discuss whether I was who he believed me to be, whether someone capable of organizing such a calculated act of retaliation would make a good long-term partner, and whether he could rely on me to refrain from doing such a thing in the event of a fight or disagreement. Her remark struck a different chord than my dad's silence, or my mother's smack. She wasn't punishing me or shouting at me. She sincerely feared that her son would wed someone who could do what I could. She just expressed her wish that I would consider my actions, and the aspects of my character that they exposed when I attempted to explain myself. She went on to say that although she understood Ethan's need for distance, she still loved me. After the call ended, I spent an hour sobbing on the kitchen floor. My father left me a message 3 weeks after the wedding. I listened to it 3 times in an attempt to comprehend his voice's flat, factual tone. According to him, Rachel's panic attack was so severe that her mother had to take her to the ER. Her heart was pounding. She was having trouble breathing. She believed she was going to die. The doctor sent her home with pills after diagnosing anxiousness. She was now seeing a therapist twice a week, and taking medication for sadness and anxiety. According to Dad, the therapist informed them that Rachel's lifelong desire for external validation and approval was caused by the public humiliation. She was already in a wounded place when I revealed her and Chris's connection to the world. Her wedding wasn't just ruined by me, it would take months or even years to mend the damage I caused to her mental health. Throughout the entire communication, Dad's tone remained objective and icy. Just facts presented like a weather report, with no emotion or rage. In some ways, that was worse than if he had screamed. He closed the voicemail by saying he had to leave, and I heard the beep. On a Tuesday afternoon, when I was meant to be at work, Ethan arrived home. My manager advised me to take a few days off after I called in sick, because I was crying uncontrollably. When I heard his pickup in the driveway, I assumed he would be returning so we could talk and work things out. Rather, he entered carrying an empty duffel bag, and made his way directly to our bedroom. Began carefully packing his garments, after removing them from his drawers. Even though I knew what he was doing, I followed him and asked. He stated that he needed to work things out, and that he would be staying with James for a time. He had to determine whether he could wed someone who followed my example. As he spoke, he continued to roll socks and fold shirts. He claimed that he couldn't stop thinking about our future children, wondering if I would employ the same strategies in future conflicts, if I would instill in them the idea that it's acceptable to exact revenge on someone who has wronged you, and whether he could rely on me to not use that calculated cruelty on him, in the event that our relationship deteriorated. I began pleading with him to sit down and have a conversation. He tried to grab his arm, but he resisted. He claimed that he was so disappointed that he couldn't even look at me at the moment. The term disappointed struck a deeper chord than angry or hurt. He took his toiletries from the bathroom, closed up the bag, and left. I was standing in our bedroom, surrounded by his partially empty drawers, when his truck started up and drove away. I began phoning relatives in an attempt to defend myself. My aunt, who had always been kind to me as a child, was called. She replied, but her tone was cold. I made an effort to inform her about Chris's infidelity, the evidence Megan had, and Rachel's impending marriage to someone who would undoubtedly cheat on her as well. Even if everything about Chris were true, there are 100 other ways to deal with it, my aunt interrupted. I had the option to tell Rachel in private. May have presented the proof to her prior to the nuptials. Rather than ruining her in front of everyone, they may have spoken to her like a sister. Then Mom declared that unless I truly apologized to Rachel, I would not be allowed to attend Thanksgiving or Christmas. I sincerely apologized and accepted responsibility for my actions, not a phony one. According to me, Rachel never truly expressed regret about the engagement meal. After her mother pushed her, she muttered something in the parking lot. My aunt's tone became more forceful. Claimed that Rachel's actions were a single instance of poor judgment. Perhaps jealousy. Perhaps it's stupidity. I waged months-long, deliberate psychological warfare. She said exactly that. Psychological conflict. She hung up after that. My uncle didn't pick up when I called. My cousin put me on voicemail when I called her. When I called my grandmother, she answered the phone but claimed she was too upset to speak with me at the moment. Everyone's rejection accumulated till I gave up. I received a text from Megan requesting to grab coffee. I nearly declined since I didn't want to hear from anybody else about how awful I was, but I went nonetheless, and saw her on a Saturday morning at the location close to the clinic. She appeared worn out, as if her sleep had been poor. Placed an order for coffee, and took a seat in the corner booth across from me. Began by stating that she had been considering the reasons for her sharing that information about Chris with me. She acknowledged that she was still upset with him for treating her badly, lying and cheating, and making her feel insane for having suspicions about him. She wanted him to be held accountable. I wanted someone to make him responsible for his repeated infidelity. However, she didn't think I would utilize it in the manner that I did. I never imagined using it as a weapon to ruin Rachel's wedding. Megan reported that she had been in therapy for a year, to deal with Chris's lack of trust. She also gained insight from her therapist. In reality, nothing is healed by taking revenge on someone else's suffering. It simply makes you feel worse, and changes you into someone you don't recognize. When she finished speaking, she turned to face me. Sad, yet not judgmental or cruel. She claimed that even though she didn't pull the trigger, she felt accountable for providing me with the ammunition. For a while, we sat there sipping coffee and observing the passers-by outside without saying anything. She gave me a hug as we walked away, and expressed her hope that I would work things out. After I got home, I couldn't get her words out of my head. I made myself consider what I had done and why. Using a notebook, I sat down at the kitchen table and wrote everything down. The humiliation, the engagement dinner, and my rage at Rachel's falsehood about Ethan. How she injured me, and how I wanted her to hurt me. But humiliating Rachel didn't make me feel better when I considered the real situation. It didn't make the engagement dinner better or take away from her actions. The fact that Ethan was gone now made me feel worse, if anything. Rachel was taking medicine for depression and anxiety, and my entire family detested me. She hurt me less than I hurt her. We overcame the awkward and uncomfortable evening of the engagement dinner. For years, perhaps forever, Rachel would be affected by what I did. She would be remembered by everyone at that wedding as the bride whose sister revealed her husband's infidelity during the reception. She could never get back what I took from her. I finally realized that I had gotten worse than the person I was angry with while I sat there writing and crying. Wrote a letter to Rachel over the course of the following few days. I had to discard 6 drafts before I was satisfied. There are no justifications for Chris's infidelity. No mentioning the engagement dinner or attempting to defend my actions. Just accepting complete accountability for my deeds, and admitting that they were immoral and hurtful. I didn't anticipate a reaction when I addressed it to her residence. 4 months passed. While Ethan was staying with James, we periodically texted about everyday tasks like mail and bills. My relatives remained far away. My sole regimen was work. After reading my letter, Rachel texted me to ask if I wanted to meet up. We chose a coffee shop in the middle between our locations. A place where neither of us had any recollections. I arrived early and saw her enter. She appeared smaller, more worn out, yet in some ways stronger than before. After we sat down, neither of us spoke for a minute. Then, Rachel began to speak. And has acknowledged that she was envious of my relationship with Ethan. It had been years. I felt envious that I appeared to be in control of my life while she was having difficulties. That jealousy, combined with an odd protective impulse that even she couldn't understand, led to the engagement dinner incident. Because of her own issues with needing to be first, needing to improve, and needing external affirmation that she was valuable, she had spent years feeling as though she was in competition with me. She was being assisted by the therapist in recognizing that pattern. I admitted to her that I allowed my rage to make myself worse than the person I was upset with. That I truly apologized for the humiliation in public, the panic episodes, the medication, and all the consequences. We spent 2 hours conversing, chatted a lot. Not merely surface-level issues. We both sobbed because it was uncomfortable. However, it was more sincere than we had ever been. We didn't exchange hugs or arrange to get together when we left. Simply accepted that we would both have to live with the fact that we had both made mistakes in separate ways. I wrote Rachel a letter, which I showed Ethan. I sent him a picture of it, and a lengthy text stating that I had begun seeing a therapist in order to understand why I felt that taking revenge was appropriate, and why I allowed my anger to take precedence over all other considerations. Asked if he would be open to trying counseling for couples. It was 4 days before he responded. Then he texted, saying, "Okay, I'll try counseling," but he didn't promise anything. We started seeing a relationship-focused counselor once a week. The meetings were harsh. Ethan forced me to face the fact that my behavior exposed a brutality that truly alarmed him. The counselor helped me examine patterns in my life, when I had harbored resentment or severed ties with individuals entirely, rather than resolving dispute by asking pointed questions about my anger, sense of justice, and readiness to harm those who had wronged me. Ethan discussed trust, and if he could spend his life with someone who might one day use that cunning retaliation against him. I had to listen while I sat there and acknowledge that I had harmed something that might never completely recover. Over the course of the following few months, I made an effort to demonstrate by my actions that I could resolve conflicts in a different way, that I could choose to talk things out rather than get even, and that I could once again be someone who could be trusted. It was difficult and slow, and on certain days Ethan gave me the impression that he was still undecided about staying. However, we persisted in attending counseling sessions. It was like traversing a minefield on Thanksgiving at my parents' house. When everyone knew there were explosives, but pretended they didn't exist. Even though I hadn't been invited since Christmas, my aunt turned up, but she sat at the other end of the table and didn't even glance at me while we were eating. Although he avoided anything that could spark genuine conversation, my uncle made small talk about the football scores and the weather. To avoid any awkward seating configurations, my mom carefully arranged the table so that I was seated between Ethan and my dad. She asked me whether I needed another roll or additional stuffing in same courteous, aloof tone she'd used with a stranger. My dad made a greater effort, inquiring about his job and the condition of the flat, but even his inquiries seemed prepared, as if he had practiced what appropriate subjects to broach. There was no Rachel. When my mother said she was spending the holiday with friends, no one inquired more. Every talk at the table seemed to be drowned out by the vacant chair where she usually sat. My cousin, who had assisted me in spreading the rumors about Chris, arrived late and departed early, hardly even looking at me. Those who did attend spent the most of dinner looking uncomfortable, and half of the typical number was absent. Dessert happened quickly as everybody made excuses about long rides home or early beginnings. Before anyone could suggest that we watch football or play cards like we used to, Ethan and I departed. When he asked me how I was doing in the car, I assured him I was fine, but we both knew it was a lie. In all honesty, I had anticipated that some people would continue to be angry. But witnessing it unfold, and witnessing my own family treat me like a courteous outsider, made it more real than I had anticipated. Christmas was made worse when my mother called 3 weeks prior, and cautiously suggested that since Rachel would be present on the actual holiday, perhaps Ethan and I might visit on Christmas Eve rather than Christmas Day. We both knew what she was truly saying, even though she presented it as if I had a choice. I assured her that Christmas Eve was all right. I said, "At least we'll have Christmas morning to ourselves," and Ethan squeezed my hand after I hung up. On Christmas Eve, we arrived with gifts and freshly baked cookies that I had cooked the night before. Everything about my parents' house felt strange, even though the decorations were the same as they had been each year. In an attempt to make up for something, my dad gave me a hug at the door, and hung on a bit too long. As we opened gifts in the living room, my mother handed me a gift card to the bookshop I liked and a scarf she had crocheted. Presents that were thoughtful, safe, and didn't need much discussion. I presented them with a framed picture of Ethan and I from an autumn hiking excursion. In addition, my mother placed it on the side table rather than on the mantel with the other family pictures. After staying for precisely 2 hours, we excused ourselves by saying we had to go home to feed the cat. After guiding us to the door, my mother gave me a tight hug. I thought she may say something genuine, but instead she pushed away, and advised me to drive carefully. For the first time since the wedding, I started crying on the way home. Being handled with careful politeness by my own mother hurt more than I had anticipated, not because anyone had been cruel. After New Year's, Ethan moved back in, but our relationship wasn't the same. As if he wasn't really committed to staying, he kept his belongings partially packed in boxes in the guest room closet. He began to unload one box at a time as we attended weekly counseling sessions. However, there were times when I caught him observing me with a look that wasn't entirely trustworthy, as if he was waiting to see if I would exact revenge once more. When a coworker took credit for my project presentation in March, I became enraged, and we got into a fight. I also let Ethan know that I wanted to provide our supervisor the email chain to demonstrate that it was my work. He fell silent, and asked if I could speak to her directly, or if I was going to publicly embarrass her. I heard what he was truly asking, so the question landed like a punch. After we resolved the issue through private conversation, Ethan started to feel more at ease. But when I became upset, I knew he was observing, waiting to discover who I was. He was afraid of what the wedding had revealed about me. And now I had to demonstrate that I could manage conflict, without becoming nasty by 1,000 tiny decisions. 7 months after the wedding, in June, I ran into Rachel at a family cookout. My mother had asked if I could take it, and informed me that she would be there. Yes, I replied. I didn't recognize the person Rachel arrived with. She was dating someone fresh. He didn't look like Chris. He was friendly and normal. We both froze for a moment when she noticed me across the yard. Then she approached. We awkwardly stood there till she greeted me, and inquired about my well-being. I responded I was fine, and inquired about her well-being. She reported that she was improving, and that her therapy was beneficial. We spent perhaps 5 minutes discussing trivial topics, my promotion at the clinic, and her new position at a marketing company. Nothing profound, nothing about the engagement banquet, the wedding, or the years of rivalry and sarcastic comments. Just two women who were once sisters talking to each other in a way that you would hardly recognize. When she introduced us to her new partner, he seemed really kind, which gave me optimism that she had found someone worthy. She and I both claimed it was nice to see each other after they departed. And we both meant it as little as possible. When Ethan later inquired about my well-being, I told him the truth. Rachel and I would definitely never be close, but at least we could be in the same room without everything blowing out. It was strange, but bearable. He gave a nod and stated, "That was probably the best outcome I could hope for, given everything that happened." I knew that he was correct. You can't fix some things that you break so horribly. My sister blamed me for not stopping her teen pregnancy, and claimed that I owed her money. 7 months later, I filed for emergency custody of her baby. I didn't stop her teen pregnancy, therefore my sister claimed I owed her money. The custody hearing was informative. When my sister Emily got pregnant at 19, I was 25 and working 3 jobs to pay for community college. She sneaked out with her boyfriend John for months, despite my warnings that he was nasty. I tried to talk to her about protection, waiting, and John's 4 other women. But she screamed that I wasn't her mother and couldn't tell her what to do. After announcing her pregnancy at supper, our parents kicked her out, and she moved in with John's family. I suggested adoption agencies or support programs, but she stated she didn't need my faux concern. 7 months later, John left her for another girl, and his parents advised Emily to move. She brought Lily, her infant, to my apartment, stating I had to help as her older sister. Not asking, telling. She said she would never have gotten pregnant if I had been a better role model and mentor. This was partly my fault. She claimed I owed her for sisterly failure. Her visit was supposed to last a few days, while she figured things out. Days stretched into months of torment. Emily wanted me to watch Lily while she went out with friends, since she was young and deserved a life. She left for weekends, turning off her phone, and I had to miss work to monitor her infant. She said I should have taught her responsibility when she was younger when I complained. So here was my time to make up for it. She spent John's child support on clothes for herself, then demanded I buy formula and diapers since I worked. When I explained I couldn't afford it, she said I should have kept her in school so she could work. But I failed her by not making her choose better. The mental gymnastics were ridiculous. My failure to prevent her pregnancy despite her constant protests was my fault. Buying baby necessities delayed my rent. Missing school to watch Lily cost me the semester. Calling out cost me a job. Emily stated these sacrifices were little compared to what she'd given up and I should be glad for my chance to be with Lily. She stated I was lucky to finally be a sister. Emily's government assistance application named me as Lily's primary caregiver, without notifying me, which broke me. She received benefits for months while I raised her child. She used my address, income, everything. I confronted her, and she stated I was Lily's mom anyhow, because I did everything. Being legally responsible made logical. She offered me the chance to have the child I'd never have alone since I was too dull to keep a partner. I started keeping records then. Every time Emily left Lily with me, I recorded dates and times. I saved all baby supply receipts. Take a snapshot of every text she sent, saying she was going out and didn't know when. She videotaped every time she called me mom in front of Lily since she couldn't correct her. 7 months of extensive abandonment documentation. Emily then aired. She posted online about being a single parent who had no aid, seeking pity and donations from strangers. She said her family abandoned her, and she worked 4 jobs raising Lily alone. People gave her money via crowdfunding apps. She'd raised $2,500 on lies when I gave up. I requested emergency Lily custody. Emily laughed when the court date was set, stating no judge would give her baby to her aunt over her mother. It didn't concern her. Not even a lawyer. She arrived in clubbing clothes from the night before, still stinking of drink and smoke. My lawyer cousin Samantha decided to aid after hearing Emily's treatment of me, and I brought 7 months of evidence. Emily was asked basic Lily's regular questions by the adjudicator. She didn't remember her previous doctor's appointment, formula, or diaper size. Emily misguessed Lily's favorite toy. Emily mumbled that I watched Lily sometimes when the judge inquired where she was during her 4 internet jobs. Samantha delivered the proof. Requested Reds is on Spotify. Check the description or comments link. Samantha slowly opened the binder, fanning out the pages to show how thick it was. Samantha arranged invoices neatly on the table as the judge leaned forward. My name, card number, purchases, formula, diapers, baby wipes, apparel, and Lily's growing sizes were on each. Rita showed how the dates matched Emily's text messages about going out and not knowing when she'd return. The judge saw a 3am grocery store purchase 4 months earlier, when Lily ran out of formula and I had to leave my nighttime duty to acquire more. Rita revealed Emily's text from that night saying her phone was dying at a downtown club. Emily paled as Rita stacked more evidence. 7 months of evidence on the table looked like a crime. While I changed diapers, Emily's social media pictures showed her laughing and carefree at parties, bars, and concerts. The receipts' timestamps matched. Rita gave me my calendar, every day marked with a K for Emily being home with Lily, or a N for me doing everything. The trend was clear. Several weeks of Ns, followed by 1 or 2 Ks before another long stretch of being the only parent. The judge silently traced the calendar's characters. Emily tried to shrink in her seat, her eyes flitting between the evidence and the door, as if calculating if she could flee. The judge put down the calendar and faced Emily. She studied the government aid application's date and details, and asked about it. Emily clenched her hands in her lap and mumbled that it was fine since I was monitoring Lily most of the time. While explaining that she didn't understand all the paperwork and only filled out what made sense, her voice got higher and quicker. The judge's countenance didn't change, but her posture stiffened. Instead than waiting for Emily, Rita continued. She pulled out another stack of papers with Emily's 6-month benefits in yellow dollar numbers. Rita then revealed my bank bills from those months, showing overdraft fines and late payment costs because I'd bought everything Lily needed while Emily took childcare help. The judge explicitly asked Emily what she spent the benefit money on, except Lily's care. Emily opened her mouth, but said nothing. She looked at me like I could help her, or give her the perfect answer. But I just sat with my hands folded on the table. Rita filled the pause by exhibiting Emily's credit card statements with expenditures at apparel stores, beauty counters, and bars on the same dates the benefits were transferred. The judge clenched his jaw. Rita then turned Emily's crowdfunding campaign posts on a tablet for the court to see. The judge narrowed her lips as she went through Emily's feed with reading glasses. She read one post aloud, her voice flat and professional, but making every word sound worse. Emily wrote of being alone, her family rejecting her, and working 4 jobs to feed her baby. The judge looked up from the tablet and asked Emily to name one of those 4 jobs. The court fell silent. Emily's lips opened and closed like she was attempting to make words but couldn't decide. She mentioned babysitting and online jobs, but the judge couldn't get any details. Rita presented the judge with $2,500 in bogus crowdfunding claims. Emily's silence answered the judge's question about reporting that income. Rita showed donor messages on screenshots. People hoping for her improvement. People praying and supporting a single mom they thought was battling alone. The judge went from stern to disgusted. Emily cried. Shaking her shoulders, she stated she was desperate, didn't know what to do, and needed help because everything had come apart. She nearly sounded sincere, as her voice broke on the last word. After Emily stopped crying, the judge inquired why she hadn't approached her family for help instead of lying to strangers online. I saw something new in Emily's face as she looked at me. Something that looked like shame, not her customary defensiveness. She muttered about pride and not wanting to fail. The court questioned if she realized that fraud was a crime, not a desperate error. Emily nodded but looked away, wiping her damp cheeks. Rita stood still, letting the judge see Emily behind all the excuses. Julia Foster rose from the side table with a folder almost as thick as Rita's binder. She presented herself to the judge as Lily's guardian ad litem. Judge nodded her on. Julia opened her binder and read her preliminary report calmly. Over the past month, She'd visited my flat 4 times to observe my interactions with Lily and her responses. She tried to see Emily with Lily. But Emily missed 2 visits, and was 40 minutes late to the third. Julia said Lily called me mother, ran to me when unhappy, showed me her toys, and sought my attention during play. She said Lily's attachment to me was like a stable primary caregiver relationship. Julia asked Lily about her other mama, Emily, and Lily looked bewildered and responded, "Mama was right here," pointing at me. The judge listened without interrupting, occasionally taking notes on the paperwork. Julia's advice was straightforward. Please give me interim custody while I'm evaluated over the next few months. Emily should only receive supervised visits until she can consistently meet Lily's requirements. After thanking Julia, the judge laid the report aside with her hand on top as if decided. I was granted interim legal custody of Lily by the judge immediately. Emily's face contorted like she was hit. The judge said that Emily would have twice weekly supervised visitation at the Family Services Center, and required to show significant stability and judgment improvement before any changes were considered. Emily tried to interrupt, half standing from her chair, but the judge commanded her to sit. The judge grew firmer when she said this wasn't about Emily's feelings or wants. Lily needs this. Stable, consistent, a caregiver who prioritizes her. Emily slumped into her chair, crying with her hands over her face. The judge seemed unmoved by the tears. She kept explaining the visiting schedule, Emily's requirements, and future hearings. Something relaxed in my chest, a long-standing strain I'd forgotten. Legal protection had saved Lily. Emily couldn't reclaim her. Judge wasn't done. Emily must refund all false government benefits within 7 months, or risk legal prosecution. She then announced she was referring the crowdfunding fraud to the prosecutor for criminal proceedings. Emily perked up, her eyes wide with fear. She began to speak, but the judge interrupted her, saying the court had no discretion in fraud matters. I felt Rita grasp my hand under the table. I wanted to feel sorry for Emily, and terrible about what was happening to her. But I was just exhausted and glad. This was her fault. Every decision, lie, and moment she blamed me instead of taking responsibility. This was the penalty she avoided for over 3 years. Emily glanced at me across the courtroom, and wrath sliced through the tears. She feared I betrayed her and meant to ruin her life. She didn't realize that I stopped letting her damage my. The hearing ended and everyone stood as the judge exited through her private door. Once she left, Emily ran at me across the courtroom, screaming before she reached me. She shrieked that I made everything worse, abducted her daughter, and orchestrated this whole affair like a witch. Rita instantly intervened, forcing Emily to stop or push through her. Rita calmly reminded Emily that her actions was why she lost custody, and that she needed to go before she made things worse. The bailiff approached with his hand on his belt, indicating readiness. Emily started screaming over Rita's shoulder, calling me names I won't mention, and saying hurtful things about my life and choices, even though I knew they originated from her grief. Other courtroom attendees were staring. A clerk stopped gathering papers to watch. Rita warned Emily again to leave, or the bailiff would take her. Emily retreated, her chest thumping and her cheeks blotchy from crying. She pointed to me and said I hadn't won. Turning, she pushed through the courtroom doors so fiercely they hit the walls. I picked up Lily from the courtroom childcare where she played during the hearing. She grabbed me instantly, throwing her little arms over my neck. She grumbled in her car seat for 25 minutes on the way home, sensed something was wrong but not knowing what. I made her lunch at our flat while she held onto my leg, refusing to let go. Perhaps half of her meal was eaten before she pushed the plate aside. I carried her to her room for nap time, and she cried and called for Mama, breaking my heart. I held her, rocked her, and sang her favorite song till her eyes became heavy. She slept with her hand in my shirt, preventing me from leaving. I sat on the floor next to her crib, watching her breathe and fall asleep. After what happened, I felt it physically. Not just her aunt anymore. Not only a temporary aide, I was now her legal guardian, responsible for everything. I handled all her decisions, issues, and needs. I was 24, and she was 2. This was my life now. My phone rang that evening after Lily woke up from her nap and I fed and bathed her. Screen displayed Lena's name. I answered while Lily played with blocks on the living room floor. Lena said she heard about the hearing from my mother, and was proud of me for defending Lily when no one else would. She offered to watch Lily a couple times a week when I attended lessons and stated she had flexible hours at her job. Thanking her brought tears to my eyes after a hard day. I froze when Lena said something. She said, "The family knew Emily was exploiting me for months. They'd watched me struggle, and Emily partying while I raised her daughter. But no one wanted to join the drama, wanted no sides. To avoid awkwardness at family reunions. They watched and remained silent while I drowned. Lena apologies. Said she should have spoken up sooner. Help should have been given earlier." I assured her it was okay, but it wasn't. Knowing they'd all watched hurt almost as much as Emily's actions. But I needed aid now more than a grudge. Ignoring the adult discourse, Lily tossed a block and giggled. I told Lena I'd take her childcare offer and invited her over next week. 3 days after the hearing, my phone rang while I fed Lily lunch. The caller ID indicated an unfamiliar county number. A woman identified herself as a benefit fraud prosecutor. She required me to provide a formal declaration regarding Emily using my information to seek for government aid without permission. She assured me I wasn't in trouble. But my stomach dropped. She claimed I was a victim of identity theft and required my statement to prosecute Emily. After my afternoon appointment, I felt terrible all day. What my sister did could lead to criminal charges. Despite knowing I hadn't done anything illegal, I felt bad for starting this. Emily stole from the government using my name and address. She committed fraud, but she was my sister, and the thought of her going to jail made me sick. Emily's texts flooded my phone that night. Initial apologies stated that she didn't intend for things to escalate. They then accused me of damaging her life over a mistake. She felt I was vengeful and punishing her for past misdeeds. She texted that I'd always envied her, and could ruin everything for her. The texts kept coming in, my phone vibrating on the coffee table, while Lily played with her blocks. Some texts asked me to call the prosecutor to admit my error. Others called me cruel names, and that I was a lousy sister who never cared about family. I sent Rita screenshots of everything. Within minutes, she called and urged me to stop answering. She advised recording every message but not responding. Emily was spiraling. So whatever I said may be used against me in the custody evaluation. Emily's number was muted, as I got Lily ready for bed. The Downtown Family Services Center hosted the first monitored visitation Thursday afternoon. I hoped Lily would benefit from Emily's months-old clothes. We checked in 20 minutes early at the front desk. Waiting room rugs and plastic chairs were anchored to the floor. Lily played with a teddy animal on my lap while we waited. And waited. 25 minutes late. Emily hadn't arrived. 35 to 45 minutes. Emily entered just as I was going to ask the receptionist. She looked awful. The bun on her filthy hair was sloppy. Sleep-worn garments. She smelled like she hadn't showered in days. Stale smokes and body odor made me want to leave. Our supervisor, Rachel, took us back to a small room with toys and a table. Emily quickly grabbed Lily. But she started crying and sought for me. I saw Emily's face crack, her armor. She blinked back tears and smiled at Lily. Rachel advised Emily to sit on the floor and let Lily come when ready. Lily held onto my leg as Emily sat down and pulled out her phone. Rachel took notes in the corner with a clipboard. Her pen moved smoothly over the page as she wrote every few minutes. Emily wanted Lily to like toys. But she didn't know which ones. Lily shook her head at her toy. She offered blocks, but Lily declined. After starting to play, Lily kept near me, periodically checking for me. Emily spent much of the hour scrolling her phone, sometimes checking on Lily. When she tried to take Lily up, Lily cried so loudly that Rachel intervened. Emily lowered Lily with shaky hands. I loathed everything about the visit. It seemed wrong and terrible. Lily virtually launched herself at me and buried her face in my shoulder after the hour. Emily watched us depart with her arms at her sides, appearing more lost than ever. Rachel contacted 4 days later to schedule a house evaluation. She brought a big folder and measuring tape to my apartment the following Tuesday. Open cabinets, check smoke detectors, measure Lily's bedroom. She went through every room. She asked about our daily routine, including Lily's wake-up time, breakfast, nap time, and evening activities. I showed her my childcare schedule with the daycare near my work. She questioned about my finances, so I showed her my budget spreadsheet with every dollar spent. She examined my infant supply receipts and Lily's care expenses. Despite my little apartment and low salary, she was pleased by my organization. Her tidy, petite handwriting filled pages in her folder with notes. Nicolette asked about my future intentions, and my throat tightened. I admitted to dropping to part-time at community college, because I couldn't afford tuition and daycare. My original aim was to graduate this year, and hunt for better jobs. As I balanced work and Lily, I took 1 or 2 classes per semester. Nicolette nodded and typed several lines in her folder. She stated it proved my dedication to Lily's needs, even at my own expense. I cried because it was true but hurt to utter. All my plans had changed, and I couldn't go back. Nicolette spent another hour in emergency procedures, asking about my support system and Lily's medical documents. Her departure left me drained and vulnerable, like she'd seen my entire existence and thought it inadequate. Emily returned to social media a few days later. My friend sent me a screenshot of the first post wondering whether I was okay. Emily wrote a lengthy account of how I exploited the judicial system and snatched her kid using lies and bogus evidence. She stated I was constantly jealous of her and hated seeing her happy. She said I lied about her being a bad mother to get Lily. Dozens of strangers commented on the page, expressing how bad I was and how sorry they were for Emily. She tweeted additional twisted charges the next day. She said I faked documents and paid witnesses to lie in court. Samantha claimed the judge was biased because she knew a courtroom employee. She portrayed herself as the victim, and me as a monster, who planned everything out of spite. I watched others believe her story, and felt helpless. That weekend, my mother called. Although I almost didn't respond, I answered on the 4th ring after seeing her name on my phone. She asked me about my side after seeing Emily's posts. She asked whether I had to go this far instead of working it out with my family. My chest erupted in wrath quickly. I told her that she'd kicked Emily out when pregnant, and scarcely seen Lily since birth. I told her she couldn't question my choices after she claimed she didn't want to be involved. Her silence was long. She then asked how Lily was and if I needed anything. I told her we were okay and hung up fast. Put my phone down with shaky hands. I was sick of people giving advice without helping. Emily's posts prompted Samantha's call that night. She advised me to instantly private all my social media accounts and not respond to Emily's charges online. My public statements could be misinterpreted and used against me in court, she warned. I should have kept quiet and let the evidence speak for itself. I took her advice, even though it hurt to see people believe Emily's falsehoods. I wanted to defend myself to tell everyone what occurred. I kept quiet and made my accounts private while my sister told everyone her story. Even though I did the right thing, it felt like losing. The second monitored visit was 3 weeks later. I took Lily to family services expecting another unpleasant hour like before. Emily and a stranger were already in the waiting area when we entered. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, and she laughed at his words. She sprang up and pulled him over when she spotted us. She called him Lucas, and told Lily he would be her dad. Lucas tried to high-five Lily, who ducked behind my legs. Lucas' identity was immediately asked by the supervisor. Emily wanted her boyfriend to meet Lily during the visit. Nicolette looked hard and separated them, indicating that only Emily may visit. Emily argued that Lucas would be in Lily's life, therefore he should be involved now. Nicolette reiterated that Emily's court order required supervised visits, and would be cancelled if she didn't comply. Lucas seemed uneasy, and offered to wait in the car. Emily looked at me like this was my fault before following Nicolette to the visitation room. I watched Emily try to get Lily to play with blocks through the window while waiting in the van after the visit. Lily continued glancing at the door where I departed, and Emily's frustration reflected in her uneven block stacking. Nicolette led them out after the hour with a stiff smile that didn't reach her eyes. Lily came to me and hugged my legs, burying her face in my trousers. Emily watched us from the doorway with her arms crossed, her look unreadable. I fastened Lily in her car seat and drove home without looking back. Nicolette called me that night after I put Lily to bed. She asked to discuss what she'd seen during the visit, and I sat on my couch with a knot in my gut. She noted Emily's behavior with the boyfriend, specifically bringing someone new around Lily without permission, demonstrated poor boundary judgment. Considering how unpleasant the situation was, I consented. After Nicolette inquired if Emily had rushed into relationships, I told her about John and how it ended. Emily had introduced Lily to 4 other serious lovers in the past year, who had been around for a few weeks before vanishing. Nicolette paused before saying she'd note this pattern in her evaluation. She complimented me for being honest, and promised to contact me. My palms shook when Samantha called 4 days later with news. Emily was charged with crowdfunding campaign benefit, fraud, and theft by deceit by the prosecutor. Samantha said my evidence was solid enough for criminal prosecution, not simply civil penalties. Despite knowing Emily's actions would make me sick, I felt sick. My phone rang almost midnight that night. Emily's name flashed on the screen, and I almost didn't answer. But something made me. She cried so hard I couldn't understand her. She stated the police informed her of the charges, and that she was going to jail for providing the evidence. After letting her cry, I told her I hadn't filed charges. The prosecutor did it alone. She urged me to drop the charges to explain it was a misunderstanding. I calmly stated that I didn't control the prosecutor, and that they had to pursue a crime upon proof. She said I lied and hung up. Emily missed the next visit. Lily and I waited 25 minutes in the Family Services Center waiting area before Nicolette stated Emily hadn't called to cancel. Lily inquired where her other mama was, and I didn't know what to say. We drove home and I tried to keep our afternoon routine normal, but I felt terrible seeing Lily gaze toward the door whenever she heard a sound. Next week's visit was identical. No Emily, no phone call, just me and Lily in that waiting room until Nicolette let us go. She wrote on her clipboard about this contradiction, which worried her. When I asked Emily why she missed the visits, Nicolette stated she couldn't reach her. After that second missed visit, Lily stopped asking about her other mama, which saddened me more. I wanted to return to school full-time, but I needed affordable childcare. I visited a daycare program that offers student discounts through the community college. The director showed me the toddler section where Lily's age youngsters played with toys and made crafts. I understood everything about Lily's schedule and demands, so I answered her queries effortlessly. My binder with Lily's medical and allergy records was pulled out when she asked. The director grinned and remarked, "Most parents weren't nearly this organized." I enrolled Lily 3 mornings a week to do further lessons. I felt odd writing my name as guardian, instead of aunt or family, on the enrollment documents. I was shaken by its permanency. Seeing my name in black ink, as the child's legal guardian. 2 weeks later, Nicolette called to arrange a meeting at her workplace the following day. I asked my aunt to watch Lily, and arrived apprehensive about what she may find. When I entered, Nicolette had a hefty file on her desk and was direct. She'd surprised Emily at her present home the day before. My stomach dropped, wondering what she found. Emily lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with her boyfriend and 2 roommates, Nicolette said. The apartment was full of clothing and dishes, and a child couldn't sleep there. Emily vaguely pointed to the couch, when Nicolette inquired where Lily would sleep when she visited. Nicolette also reported that one roommate was smoking despite Emily's assurance that the apartment was smoke-free. After hiring a criminal lawyer, Emily acknowledged she couldn't afford her own home. Nicolette closed the file and faced me. Her evaluation suggested I have full custody of Emily, with supervised visitation. I pondered what she said, feeling relieved and sad. Nicolette said Emily had not addressed the issues that led to the temporary custody order. She missed visits, made bad living decisions, and didn't prioritize Lily's needs. The judge would receive the recommendation within a week and schedule a final hearing. Nicolette stated she was doing what was best for Lily, when I complimented her for being thorough and honest. As I walked to my car, I felt the weight of reality. Emily was going to lose custody forever. And I was going to have a child I never wanted at 24. Emily must have heard the recommendation because I heard knocking on my apartment door 4 nights later. I checked my phone and saw 11 p.m. Emily, red-faced and crying, demanded Lily via the peephole. I called Samantha first and kept her on while I decided. Samantha said to close the door and contact the cops. Emily started beating and yelling that I stole her daughter and wrecked her life as I phoned. Neighbors' lights turned on. When I notified the operator my sister was breaching a court order by visiting my home, she indicated officers were coming. I heard sirens while Emily was pounding. I saw 2 officers talking to her and her crying while pointing at my door through the peephole. She got in the back seat as they guided her to their car. I opened my door to an officer with Samantha still on the phone. He stated they warned Emily about violating the custody order and would arrest her if she returned. After he departed, I shut the door and checked on Lily, who'd slept through everything. Emily sent me a long email the next morning. It wrote, "Please read this." I almost erased it, but something made me open it. She wrote that she understood she'd messed up and was wrong to visit my apartment. Talking to her therapist about her habits helped her recognize how her choices harmed Lily. She sought parenting classes and treatment to prove she could change. Her communication was more honest and self-aware than her typical blaming and excuses. She asked whether I would support more visitation if she improved consistently. She understood why I had custody, and that Lily required stability. But she wanted to be a true mom. I read the email 3 times. Divided between optimism that she was improving and distrust based on her past promises. I read Samantha the email over the phone. Samantha listened without interrupting, and asked my plans. I felt conflicted about helping my sister and safeguarding Lily from more disappointment and instability. Samantha reminded me that Emily had broken commitments before, and that words were easy but deeds counted. She stated I had to prioritize Lily's well-being before Emily's, or my guilt. We discussed boundaries and realistic expectations for about an hour. Samantha helped me understand that supporting Emily's growth didn't imply transferring custody unless she showed long-term change. Just knowing what to say made me feel better after we hung up. I replied to Emily while Lily napped that afternoon. I encouraged her to seek therapy and was delighted she recognized her tendencies. I recommended therapy and parenting programs, and hoped she would continue. I stated the custody arrangement should continue the same until she showed ongoing change, not just a few weeks of effort. Emily was beginning to comprehend her blame and avoidance tendencies, acknowledge how her decisions had harmed Lily, and take responsibility for her actions. According to the therapist, Emily's work and treatment insights were praised in the letter. After reading it, Samantha was quiet, then stated it was nice that Emily was working on herself. But 10 weeks of classes and treatment didn't outweigh 24 months of neglect and abandonment. The judge would review the letter, but it wouldn't affect the overwhelming evidence of Emily's instability and poor judgment. Reading about my sister's improvement made me want to believe she was changing but know that desire doesn't make it true. My mixed emotions lasted days. I kept thinking about how Emily had attended classes, gone to therapy, and attempted to do something right. Despite not changing custody, I wanted to thank her for her effort. But whenever I thought I was being too severe on her, I remembered something. The nights she vanished unexpectedly. The times Lily sobbed for hours as I attempted to calm her because Emily hadn't taught me her rituals. I spent rent on diapers and formula. The semester I failed. Samantha must have sensed my doubt when she called one evening to check on me. I felt awful for not praising Emily's recent efforts. Samantha informed me that 10 weeks didn't erase 24 months of maltreatment. Emily was doing the absolute minimum because of genuine repercussions, not because she had changed. She noted that Emily had many chances to stand up before I filed for custody, but didn't until a judge ordered her to. This conversation reminded me why I fought for custody. I prepared my testimony with Samantha the week before the final custody court 8 weeks out. She guided me through potential questions at her office after I left Lily off at daycare. She cautioned me that Emily's public lawyer would try to portray me as vengeful and exploiting the custody system to punish my sister instead of Lily. Samantha advised me to be cool despite their words. I should counter with examples rather than emotional accusations. Practiced for hours. Samantha played antagonistic attorney, while I learned to reply without defending. She taught me to use Lily's needs to answer inquiries about my motivations, instead of facts. I felt ready at week's end, but my stomach still wrenched as I thought about testifying against my sister in court. I barely slept and got up at 5 on the final hearing day. My blue outfit, which Samantha claimed looked professional without trying, was placed out the night before. Lily and I hugged before dropping her off at daycare after breakfast. The director assured me they'd care for her, regardless of hearing length. Samantha and I met outside the courthouse at 8:30 and reviewed everything on a corridor bench. She advised me to breathe, pause before answering questions, and look at the judge, not Emily. My hands shook while speaking. Emily and an unfamiliar public defender arrived 20 minutes before the hearing. She wore black leggings and a white shirt with a ponytail. She seemed exhausted but well put together, unlike the emergency custody hearing. Her young public defender checked his phone and didn't seem interested in the case. Emily looked at me once when she entered but didn't say anything. She sat at her table with her hands folded. Her leg bounced under the table, the same uneasy tendency she had when we were youngsters. Samantha squeezed my arm and said Emily's appearance didn't matter. One morning of responsibility didn't erase 24 months of neglect. Judge Sterling Boggs entered when the bailiff called us to order. The emergency hearing judge was a 50-year-old woman, with gray hair and piercing eyes that saw through everyone. Sitting down, she opened the file in front of her and reviewed it before looking up at both tables. I was granted interim custody 5 months ago with supervised visits for Emily, the judge said. She stated, today's hearing would determine permanent custody arrangements based on the evidence and testimony presented. My stomach nodded. Judge Boggs read Nicolette's evaluation report silently for several minutes. She then glanced at Emily and inquired what had changed since the temporary custody order. Emily stood up when her public defender poked her and discussed her parenting classes. She reported weekly therapy and learning to accept responsibility for her actions. After listening without expression, The judge asked Emily about Lily's routine. Emily paused and answered Lily probably got up about 7 or 8, and preferred Cheerios for breakfast. Emily guessed Cheerios when the judge asked. Samantha wrote on her legal pad. Emily thought Lily wore size 4 or 5 diapers when the judge asked. Again, wrong. 3 months with Lily in size 6. Emily speculated that Lily's last health visit was a few weeks ago when the judge asked. I reminded Emily of her regular checkup 4 days prior, as usual. Before continuing, the judge took notes but didn't modify her expression. Julia Foster then testified. The guardian acknowledging Lily's interest throughout. She testified that she'd seen Emily and Lily come my home and care several times. Julia said Lily was attached to me, reaching all her developmental milestones, and in a stable and supportive environment at home. Julia said Lily would cry when I left Emily and spend most of the visits wondering when I was going back. She stated Lily seemed bewildered by Emily, and didn't appear as comfortable as with me. Julia advised maintaining custody with the possibility of greater visits, if Emily made progress over the next 7 months. She stressed that Lily's steadiness was crucial, considering her young age and previous disruptions. Emily's public defense claimed that any child in this situation would be anxious. Julia calmly stated that Lily's emotions suggested insecure attachment to her original mother and went beyond normal adjustment. I splashed water on my face in the washroom during the judge's recess before the next testimony. Samantha informed me everything was fine, and Julia's testimony was perfect. Samantha stated the evidence was too strong for Emily's public defense to change this. We returned to court and Emily's therapist testified remotely via video. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes. The therapist spoke carefully about anonymity while delivering necessary information. She said Emily had been attending weekly therapy for 3 months to work on accountability and understanding her blaming and avoidance behaviors. Emily was beginning to comprehend how her choices had harmed Lily and take responsibility, according to the therapist. The judge requested the therapist to propose unsupervised visitation now. The therapist paused before responding, saying that Emily was making progress in therapy but that meaningful transformation took time and effort. She stated that 3 months of treatment couldn't repair years of habits, and that Lily's young age and need for stability required gradual custody adjustments. The therapist couldn't advocate unsupervised visitation, but she hoped Emily would keep working on her therapy regardless of custody. Emily stared down at her hands while the therapist spoke, leaned forward. Samantha next meticulously showed the judge my stable housing, employment, and childcare arrangements. Her records included every doctor's appointment, developmental screening, and immunization I'd taken Lily to. Samantha showed my pay stubs and bank records to explain how I budgeted to meet Lily's needs on a low salary. She mentioned the early intervention services I'd organized when Lily's pediatrician noticed developmental delays, and how she was improving with constant support. Samantha stressed that I had dropped a part-time school and worked around childcare hours to give Lily the stability she deserved. She showed the court my updated degree plan that took 4 years instead of 1, proof I wanted to raise Lily long-term. Samantha's presentation was well organized, building on each exhibit to illustrate Lily's existence, as I had envisioned it. Emily's public defense gave his closing argument, and I braced. He described Emily as a child when she became a mother at 19. He said she made mistakes, but every young mom does, and she deserved a chance to be a true mother with help and structure. He cited her parenting classes and treatment attendance as proof of her changed dedication. He suggested that the court explore a progressive reunion plan that would allow Emily to restore her bond with Lily through increased visitation and shared custody. He said Emily was young and overwhelmed, not unfit, and that taking away a mother's kid permanently was an extreme move that should only be used in circumstances of severe abuse or neglect. The public defender talked strongly, but I could tell he didn't know Emily or comprehend what occurred. Samantha was ready to reply. My legs shook as I headed to the witness stand when the judge called me. Samantha started with basic inquiries regarding Emily moving in with me and how things changed. In the first several weeks, I thought Emily needed temporary help. She then revealed she has no intention of parenting Lily. Rita and I went to the corridor and I sat on the bench, trying not to vomit from fear. Everything seemed strange, like I was watching someone else. Rita continued telling me the evidence was overwhelming, and the judge saw everything. Lena then arrived with coffee from the street shop and sat next to me, wrapping her arm across my shoulders. She said I'd done everything right for Lily no matter what. She stated it takes bravery to fight for my niece while everyone else left. We waited 25 minutes while the judge evaluated the case while I saw other families pass through the courthouse with their own issues. Everyone had a tale. Everyone fought for something. We returned to court once the bailiff called us. Judge Boggs spoke after looking at both tables, serious. She admitted to thoroughly reviewing all evidence, testimonies, and evaluation reports. The judge noticed Emily's recent improvements, but 3 months of education and therapy couldn't offset 24 months of abuse and abandonment. Given her young age and developmental demands, Lily needs stability and continuous care, she said. Judge Boggs then granted me complete legal and physical custody of Lily. Emily would have twice monthly supervised visitation at the Family Services Facility, with the option of additional access, if she made progress over the next 7 months. It prioritized Lily's well-being while allowing Emily to keep a relationship with her daughter provided she worked on herself, the court said. Emily was crying but nodding, not screaming. I felt Rita grip my hand and heard Lena breathe next me. Emily had to continue treatment and parenting education after the judge set visitation conditions. In 7 months, she would evaluate the case to determine if any changes were needed. It ended. I had complete Lily custody. The judge said Emily must finish probation and attend therapy. She had to attend every Lily visit for 7 months, and verify her stability before requesting more time. Emily nodded with tears. She wasn't upset at me like usual. She looked sorrowful, and banged up. Like she realized what she'd lost. I sat feeling strange, while Rita packed her papers. I won, but not really. When the bailiff told we may leave, everyone headed toward the doors. The fluorescent lights were too harsh when I took my bag out of the corridor. Aunt Lena hugged me and said proud. Rita squeezed my shoulder and promised to call about the papers later. Emily approached me. Her mascara was smudged, and she appeared tiny, like she had lost her struggle. She apologized for everything she'd done to me. She stated my presence blessed Lily. Her voice cracked when she begged if we could be sisters after losing custody. I wished her well, but trust building takes time. She nodded, dried her eyes, and left with her public defender. After the hearing, I picked up Lily from daycare. She ran to me, yelling "Mama," and hugged my legs. She was secured in her car seat, and we went home in afternoon traffic. I carried her into my flat and sat her down. She always went to her toy box. From the kitchen, I watched her play on the living room floor. The permanence of things hit me hard then. No longer her temporary guardian, I was her legal mother. I was 24 years old, single, working part-time at a grocery store, and raising a toddler alone. I loved her more than everything, but I never wanted kids at this age. Rita brought forms 4 days later. I became Lily's legal guardian, so she helped me request Tony's child support. We reviewed my application for my current benefits. The assistance would cover rent, groceries, and daycare. However, money didn't erase the reality that my life had taken a different path than I had planned when I was 18. Next week, I saw my community college academic advisor. Motivational posters adorned her little office. I explained my issue and she opened my transcript on her computer. We arranged for me to take online lessons after Lily went to bed. My graduation would take 4 years instead of 1. I felt both lost and capable. She produced my new course schedule, and wished me luck. Emily had her first supervised family services visit 3 weeks after the custody verdict. I brought Lily at 2 as scheduled. Miss Chen, the supervisor, had a clipboard and a nice face. Emily was in the visitation room waiting. She immediately started playing with blocks on the floor with Lily. She read books and puzzled with her instead of using her phone. She listened and acted like a mom for an hour. Miss Chen said the visit went well, and listed the improvement in her report when I picked up Lily. I tentatively hoped Emily was beginning to grasp parenthood. After that, my parents visited more. Mom brought groceries, and Dad fixed housing problems. They'd play with Lily and watch her while I did homework or went errands. One evening while washing dishes in my kitchen, my mom mentioned Emily's immaturity reminded her of herself. She regretted kicking Emily out during the pregnancy. We started talking more honestly about our familial traits and habits. It wasn't perfect, but it started. A month later, I joined a support group for kinship caregivers that met every Thursday night at a church basement. There were around 12 people there, raising their grandkids or nieces or nephews. They related stories of dealing with the courts and managing visits with birth parents and suffering with money. Hearing their experiences made me feel less alone. One mother named Patricia was raising her 3 grandsons and worked 2 jobs. Another guy called James had custody of his sister's twin daughters. Everyone knew family was complicated and messy. They reminded me that doing right doesn't always feel wonderful. 4 months after final custody, Lily called me mama constantly. She rarely mentioned Emily between visits. Even though my new therapist indicated toddlers connect to their primary caregiver, I felt terrible. I showed Lily Emily images on my phone and talked positively about her. As I said, "Your other mama loves you very much. And she's working hard to be the best mama she can be." Lily would glance at the pictures and say, "Okay," and play again. Emily's therapist reported good progress to the court 5 months later. Emily never missed a monitored visit. She completed her probation and paid some of her debts. A mall retail business hired her to fold clothing and run the register. She emailed photos of her new studio flat. Small but clean, the flat had a bed, table, and TV. A text asked if I was proud of her. I replied back that I was glad of her and hoped she kept establishing a secure life. I responded back that I admired her work and wished her well. Then I said custody wouldn't change soon. She needed to know I wouldn't change everything because she'd improved for months. Her reply was quick. She acknowledged and claimed she had to prove herself over time. She got Lily's well-being first. As she wrote, Emily's remarks were strange to read. That was her first such speech. Maybe the therapy worked. Maybe she was finally seeing things plainly instead of through blame and excuses for years. I wanted to trust it. But I knew people might say good things without meaning them. Time would tell if this was change or a performance. The Family Services Center called 3 weeks later. Tony requested Lily visitation. The supervisor stated he'd finished the background check and parenting training, and wanted to start his twice-monthly visits. It felt odd. Tony was barely around since Lily was born. He paid child support because the court ordered it, but he'd never seen her. He immediately wanted a fatherhood. The supervisor chose Saturday morning at 10 for his first visit. I brought Lily to the center and found Tony in the visitation room. He appeared anxious. Moving hands made him unsure where to stand. When Lily noticed him, she hid under my legs. He escaped her memory. Tony got on the floor with blocks after the supervisor gently encouraged her to play. The tower he built kept falling over. Lily waited a moment before slowly approaching and handing him a brick. My chest relaxed watching them. Tony was bad at this. Despite his awkwardness and lack of direction, he tried. She laughed when he read a book with improper voices. His push on the small indoor swing made her squeal. They played peekaboo and Lily called him daddy by the end of the hour, even though she didn't comprehend. Supervisors said the visit went well. Tony requested a return visit 3 weeks later. Driving home with Lily snoozing in her car seat, I realized how messy everything was. Emily was organizing her life. Finally, Tony stepped up. Parents participated again. Despite her misery, dysfunction, and court fights, Lily had loved ones. Must count for something. 7 months. Emily kept her therapy appointments. Tony arrived every 3 weeks on time. My parents babysat and brought groceries. Lena regularly assessed our progress. Slowly, something almost normal formed. Next was Lily's 3rd birthday. A week went into planning a small apartment party. Lily was obsessed with unicorns, so I bought decorations and ordered a unicorn cake. I invited Emily, Tony, my parents, and Lena. Part of me expected someone to cancel, start drama, or ruin everything again. The day came, and everyone arrived. Emily arrived first with a wrapped gift and a nervous smile. They bought Lily a stuffed unicorn almost as big as her. Lily immediately hugged and dragged it around the apartment. Tony returned with books and a card. My parents brought too much food. While I prepared, Lena decorated. We almost felt like a family for a few hours. Emily served cake without complaint. Tony played with Lily and the building kids I invited. My parents snapped photos and laughed at Lily's excitement over each gift. Nobody fought. Nobody mentioned the custody battle, court, or our painful history. A girl turned 3 recently. Everyone gathered for cake. Lily stood on a chair to reach candles. Her face was covered in frosting from sneaking tastes. I lit the 3 candles and we sang happy birthday. Something changed as I watched her blow them out with everyone cheering. My 20 seconds should be different. I was supposed to graduate college, start a career, travel, date, and do all the things 20-somethings do. I raised a toddler alone in a cramped apartment while working part-time and completing online school. I'd lost my life plan, but seeing Lily's excitement as she clapped and laughed with loved ones, I knew I'd made the correct option. She was healthy, happy, and safe. Growing up, she knew she was wanted and battled for. All the sacrifices were worthwhile. Life didn't go as planned, but I wouldn't alter it. When defending her, No. Not when it meant she might experience moments like this with frosting on her face in a room full of caring people. My family rejected my marriage to the person I loved because he was poor. My father tried to sabotage his career. Now, my mother apologizes. My family rejected me because I married the wrong person. They want to go back in after meeting his parents. My father gave the ultimatum 4 weeks before my wedding. He called at 9 p.m. on a Thursday as I was sending invitations at my kitchen table, and his voice was icy and controlled, as if he'd already made a decision, and wanted me to know it was definite. If you marry this man, you are no longer part of this family, he told you. There was no introduction or explanation, simply a straightforward remark that marked the end of 26 years as his daughter. I asked why, and he laughed. However, the sound lacked comedy and instead conveyed disgust. You understand exactly why, Sophie. We raised you better than this. We gave you every chance, sent you to the best schools, introduced you to the right people, and you chose to throw it all away for someone who works with his hands like common labor, someone whose family probably can't even afford to contribute to the wedding. It's embarrassing. The word hung in the air between us like poison. David and I first met 16 months ago at a community garden project where I was volunteering as part of my nonprofit job. He was establishing an irrigation system. His hands were coated in dirt as he explained to a group of elderly Vietnamese gardeners how to maintain the water pipes. He addressed them with care and respect, never speaking down or simplifying beyond what was required. When he grinned, his entire face changed. I previously dated investment bankers and lawyers. Men my parents approved of. None of them had ever looked at anyone the way David did at the gardeners, as if their knowledge and expertise were as important as his technical abilities. My mother picked up the phone next. Her approach was different, softer, but more cutting. Sweetheart, your father and I just want what's best for you. You're making an emotional decision without thinking about your future. What happens when the novelty wears off and you're stuck with someone who can't provide the lifestyle you're accustomed to? What happens when you have children and realize you've trapped yourself in mediocrity? She used the word mediocrity, as if it were a diagnosis, a disease I'd contracted that she desperately wanted to cure. I informed them that David ran his own contracting business with 10 staff and consistent contracts, that he had put himself through technical school while caring for his younger sister, after their mother died. That he was nice and thoughtful, and made me happier than I had been in years. My father responded quickly and brutally. Then, you have made your decision. The call ended, and I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by half-addressed invitations, my hands shaking so badly that I couldn't hold the pen. Don't expect us at the wedding. Don't expect any financial support. Don't expect to be included in family events, or to have access to your trust fund. You've chosen him over us, so live with that. David returned home from a job site an hour later, and saw me still sitting there in the dark. He didn't inquire what had occurred. He simply drew me into his arms, and let me cry till nothing remained. When I eventually told him what my father had said, he stiffened his jaw but kept his voice calm. We don't need them. We'll build our own family better than the one you came from. My sister, Anna, called the next morning. She seemed cautious, as if she were negotiating a hostage situation. Dad's serious, Sophie. He's already changed his will. Mom's devastated. But she won't go against him. If you just postpone the wedding, give it a few more months, maybe they'll calm down and we can figure something out. I asked her why I needed to postpone my wedding to appease our parents' snobbery. She sighed, as if I were being purposefully difficult. Because they're family. Because Dad controls everything. Because you're making this harder than it needs to be. The following 4 weeks were spent in solitude. My parents returned the wedding invitation unopened. My brother Ryan quit returning my calls and texts. My aunts and uncles, who had always been friendly and present in my life, were suddenly too busy to meet for coffee. Only my cousin Laura contacted me, and she informed me that she had been instructed not to attend the wedding if she wanted to maintain her good standing with the family. She cried as she said it, but she did not come. When David's family learned what had transpired, they had diverse reactions. His father, Robert, a quiet man who owned a small restaurant supply business, arrived at our apartment with his wife, Linda, carrying containers of cooked food. Family who treats you like this isn't family, Robert said in cautious English, his accent strong but his message obvious. You have us now. We take care of our own. Linda held me. And I burst into tears again, overwhelmed by the simple acceptance of people I barely knew. The wedding took place on a Saturday afternoon, at a modest botanical park. 45 persons attended. None of them are connected to me by blood. David's extended family occupied 2/3 of the chairs. His sister Eva served as my maid of honor because I no longer had a sister willing to stand by my side. His cousin Chris escorted me down the aisle because my father had made it obvious that he regarded that honor cancelled. When the officiant asked whether anyone had any objections to the union, the silence felt rebellious, not awkward. We were surrounded by individuals who wished us happiness. Robert and Linda hosted the reception in their garden, which was decorated with string lights and mismatched tables obtained from neighbors. Someone's uncle played guitar, and Linda's sister managed the meal with military precision. David's grandmother, who knew no English, grabbed my hand and shouted something in Spanish that Eva interpreted as, "You're one of us now. We don't abandon our children for stupid reasons." The old woman's eyes were angry as she said it, challenging me to fight. I legally changed my name. Sophie Turner became Sophie Reyes. It felt like losing a skin that had never fit properly. My father had always made it clear that I was a Turner of the Connecticut Turners. As if our bloodline represented something more than old money and prejudices. Being a Reyes represented something different. It referred to unconditional acceptance and belonging without expectation of performance. He worked more, took on additional tasks, and insisted on paying for all of our bills, even though my severance would have helped. His pride was both laudable and annoying. I found new work at a different nonprofit, earning half of my old pay, and we adjusted. I ate out less, discontinued subscriptions, and learned to economize in ways that my background never required. It was equally humbling and clear. Month 17 of the marriage saw an unexpected development. David's company won a large contract to renovate a historic building downtown. The project would last 5 months and employ the majority of his crew full-time. He returned home with the signed contract and grabbed me up, whirling me around our small kitchen and laughing. "This changes everything," he explained. "This is the kind of work that leads to bigger contracts. We're going to be okay. Better than okay." The job continued smoothly until month 3, when David received a call from the property owner. There had been complaints filed with the city regarding permit irregularities. Nothing precise, just enough ambiguity to necessitate an investigation and briefly suspend the process. David spent 2 weeks dealing with inspectors and paperwork, ensuring that all permits were correctly filed and granted. The delays cost him both money and credibility. When the inspector ultimately cleared everything up, he stated that the concerns had come from an anonymous source who appeared to have intimate knowledge of the project timeline. David and I sat at our kitchen table that night, and I watched him connect the dots. His expression ranged from perplexity to comprehension to cold fury. "Your father did this," he explained. "It wasn't a question. I tried to deny it, to believe that my father wouldn't damage my husband's business out of spite, but I couldn't. It fit in well with his pattern of punishing those who defied him. He had cut me off financially. Now he was threatening David's livelihood. The message was plain. Choosing me resulted in consequences." I contacted my father's office the following morning. His assistant stated that he was unavailable. I called his cell phone, and it went straight to voicemail. I sent him an email directly inquiring if he was behind the permission concerns. The email bounced back with an automated response stating that his filters had blocked it. He had set his system to reject anything from my address. The premeditated savagery stole my breath away. When I dialed Anna's cell phone, she finally answered. She sounded exhausted. "Sophie, I can't be in the middle of this. Dad's made his position clear, and I have my own family to worry about. I can't risk making him angry." I asked if she was aware of the permit concerns. The silence before her response told me everything. "I don't know anything specific, but Dad warned that your husband's business tactics might not survive inspection. He stated it would be unfortunate if someone examined too closely." The confirmation came like a physical blow. My father was using his connections and resources to ruin David's business. Not because David had done anything wrong, but because simply punishing me monetarily was insufficient. He needed to showcase his power, to show that opposing him had escalating consequences. The petty nature of it was astonishing. The threat was real. David refused to be intimidated. He documented everything, hired a lawyer to analyze the complaints and his responses, and ensured that all future permission applications were excellent. The project concluded 2 months late and over budget, but it was completed. The building owner was pleased enough to issue a positive recommendation. Other clients admired David's professionalism under pressure, but the damage remained. The 2-month delay had prompted him to reject down other opportunities. His image in the sector suffered from murmurs concerning dependability and problems. The second year of our marriage proved more difficult. Money remained tight. I took a second part-time job writing grants from home. David worked 60-hour weeks in an effort to regain momentum. We were fatigued and stressed. And for the first time, I realized what my mother meant about novelty wearing off. Except that the novelty wasn't wearing off. It was battling sabotage and solitude while attempting to build a life together. We debated more. They struggled to find time for each other. I felt the weight of my family's rejection, in unexpected and devastating ways. Ramon and Linda provided consistent assistance. Sunday dinners at their place became a sanctuary. Linda's cooking, Ramon's gentle wisdom, and the easy fondness of David's extended family, who met every week to share food and stories. His grandmother would pat my hand and say things in Spanish that I was gradually coming to comprehend. Los árboles verdes, crescent, and tormentas. Strong trees develop during storms. I wanted to believe her. Month 23 saw a crisis. David fell from scaffolding on a job site, breaking his wrist and 3 ribs. The injuries were not life-threatening, but they prevented him from working for 5 weeks. His workforce could do lesser jobs under his leadership. But the business suffered. I watched him struggle with being sidelined, the anguish and fury, and the concern that this setback would exacerbate the harm my father had already done. His medical insurance covered the majority of the expenditures, but not all of them. We maxed up our credit card to pay the deficit. I swallowed my pride and called Ryan, informed him of David's accident, and asked if he might provide us with a short-term loan. We would repay him with interest as soon as David returned to work. Ryan remained motionless for a long time before saying, "I can't do that, Sophie. Dad will find out, and I can't afford to be on his bad side right now. I'm sorry, but you made your decisions, and you have to live with them." He hung up before I could reply. The betrayal went deeper than my father's initial rejection. Ryan and I had been close growing up. He was the one who taught me how to ride a bike, helped me with my math assignments, and stood up to bullies in middle school. He was now refusing to help when I really needed him since our father's approval was more important than our connection. The transactional character of my birth family's love became impossible to ignore. We made it through David's recovery thanks to a combination of savings, side job I took up, and a loan from Ramon, which he insisted was a gift rather than a loan. "Family helps family," he replied cautiously, refusing to share payback details. Linda brought food 3 times a week. Eva organized a meal train with other family members. They surrounded us with practical support, and never once made us feel like a burden. The contrast with my own family's abandonment was clear and unambiguous. David recovered and returned to work with a passion that bordered on obsession. He rebuilt his firm through sheer willpower, doing tasks that other contractors would not touch, working harder than anybody else, and demonstrating his dependability time and over until the whispers of troubles subsided. The third year of our marriage was more monetarily successful, but the emotional toll of the previous 2 years remained. We made it out alive, but the incident had changed us. I discovered I was pregnant in month 38. On a Sunday morning, the test came back positive, and I sat on the bathroom floor for 20 minutes, crying, before telling David. When I eventually showed him, he drew me in and said, "This is going to be amazing. We're going to be amazing parents, better than the ones you came from." I wanted to believe him, but my anxiety was overwhelming. My parents had abandoned me. What if I wasn't sure how to be a better parent? What if their poison affected me in ways I couldn't detect? Linda hosted a baby shower for me in her backyard, which was filled with David's extended relatives. Women I barely knew offered gifts, advice, and personal stories about their pregnancies and children. His grandmother held my developing belly and prayed in Spanish for the baby's health and happiness. It was humbling to receive love from folks I had known for less than 4 years. I thought of my mother, who hadn't contacted in 3 years, didn't realize she was going to be a grandma, and had chosen pride over relationship. I sent my parents a letter announcing the pregnancy, not because I expected them to care, but because I wanted proof that I had tried. That when this child inquired as to why they did not know their maternal grandparents, I could honestly reply that I had made an effort only to be rejected. The letter was returned marked, "Returned to sender," in handwriting that I recognized as my mother's. She'd gotten it and returned it unopened. The message was clear. I was dead to them, as was their grandchild. Anna called back 2 weeks later. "Mom's upset that you told other people about your pregnancy before telling family." I cracked a joke. A sharp noise that surprised us both. I attempted to tell her. She returned my letter unopened. She made her decision. Anna sighed. She wasn't sure what was in the envelope. She assumed it was another attempt to guilt-trip them about the wedding. You should try calling. I questioned why I should be the one making an effort when I had been cut off for liking the wrong person. Anna had no response. Our daughter, Maya, was born on a Wednesday, in April. 8 pounds, 6 ounces. Perfect, healthy, and ours. David cried as they placed her in his arms. Linda and Robert arrived at the hospital within hours. His grandmother embraced Maya and cried, murmuring blessings in Spanish. Eva took almost 1,000 photographs. The waiting room was full with David's family members celebrating his new life. My family stayed conspicuously missing. I made one more attempt. I sent my parents a birth announcement with Maya's photo and information. This one was not returned, and there was no response either. The quiet remained unbroken. My daughter will grow up not knowing half of her genetic family, because they felt her father wasn't good enough. The injustice made me literally ill on certain days. On other days, I was relieved that Maya would never have to experience their conditional affection. Motherhood consumed the following year. Maya was colicky and demanding, and I loved her with a ferocity that scared me. David was a hands-on father who changed diapers at 3 a.m. When she couldn't sleep, I would walk the floor with her. We were fatigued, broke, and happier than we had been since our wedding. Linda showed me how to cook traditional meals. Robert made Maya's cot with his own hands. The family who had accepted me proceeded to shower us with practical affection. In our 4th year of marriage, David's business finally earned a profit. The historic building project had resulted in 3 more improvements. His reputation had regained. He hired 2 more staff, and rented a professional office space, rather than working from our flat. We moved into a little house, with a yard for Maya to play in. Nothing lavish, but ours. Built on his efforts and my commitment, uninfluenced by my father's money or approbation. Maya was 18 months old when she received the call on Saturday morning. I nearly ignored an unfamiliar phone number. When I answered the phone, Anna's voice sounded weird. Sophie. I need you to listen. Without hanging up. Something's happened, and Mom wants to talk to you. I inquired what had happened and why she thought I'd care after 4 years of silence. Anna's voice sank to a whisper. Just please, she needs to talk to you. When my mother answered the phone, her voice was different, smaller in some ways. She inquired how I was doing, and I replied that I was fine, waiting for the true reason she had called. She inquired about David and Maya. I responded minimally. Finally, she stated, I saw David's parents last week at a charity gala. Linda, who runs a foundation that provides meals to food-insecure families, and Robert, who apparently sits on the hospital board and has been a major donor for years, were presenting a substantial check to a children's hospital. They were receiving an award for their community service. Her words were stilted, as if she were reading from a script she hadn't written. I felt something chilly creep into my chest. So, you're calling because you realized Robert and Linda Reyes are philanthropists, that they're the kind of people you consider respectable. Is that what it takes for you to acknowledge I exist? My mother tried to cut me off, but I kept going. You cut me off because you believed David came from nothing, and that his family was inferior to yours. Now you find out they give away more money than you spend on country club fees, and suddenly I'm worth talking to again. My mother's tone became defensive. We didn't know. If you'd told us about his parents' background, things might have been different. The comment was so ludicrous that I started laughing. His parents' background. You mean Robert immigrated at 23 with $500 and built a successful business through 40 years of hard work? Or Linda came from a family that lost everything and rebuilt it? You mean those backgrounds, which you never bothered to learn about because you were too busy being embarrassed by David working with his hands. She explained that my father wanted to meet with us, that they had made a mistake, and that they wanted to rebuild the relationship. I inquired what had changed in 4 years. Aside from her social discomfort at discovering Robert and Linda's philanthropic activity. She couldn't give me a response that didn't sound cold and hollow. I hung up after telling her I needed time to process. I sat on my couch, staring at nothing, while Maya played with blocks at my feet, completely unaware of the earthquake that had just shattered my life. David returned home from a hardware shop run, and discovered me still sitting there. When I narrated the call, his expression went through a range of emotions, before landing on a firm distrust. So, they want back in now that they know my parents aren't who they thought they were. Now that they've realized cutting you off might have been a miscalculation, he joked. Miscalculation, as if it were profanity. I nodded, hesitant to trust my own voice. We chatted for hours after Maya went to bed, working through my anger and sadness, as well as my conflicted desire to reunite with my family, despite the fact that they didn't deserve it. David was explicit about his boundaries. If we do this, if we open that door, it's on our terms. They apologize to both of us. They acknowledge what they did was wrong. They meet my parents properly, and treat them with respect. And if they slip even once, we walk away and don't look back. I agreed, but privately wondered if my parents were capable of genuine apology or if this was just another manipulation. I contacted my mother back 4 days later and informed her that David and I would meet with them, but there were certain conditions. She accepted too fast without questioning what the terms were. And I realized it was more about avoiding social disgrace than truly healing ties. We agreed to meet at a neutral restaurant the following Sunday. My tummy was churning with anxiousness all week. Sunday dawned cold and gray. David wore a suit he'd purchased expressly for this occasion, refusing to give my parents a reason to critique his appearance. We arrived 5 minutes early, and they were already sitting at a corner table. My father had aged in 4 years, with new lines around his eyes and mouth. My mother appeared brittle in a way I didn't recall. Anna was also present, perhaps serving as a buffer or witness. The first 10 minutes were spent in agonizing small conversation. My father asked about Maya in the same tone that individuals use when checking a box on a list. My mother complimented on the restaurant's decor. Anna glanced at her water glass, as if it could afford her escape. The assumption that their comfort was more important than accountability led me to delete the message halfway through. I did not call back. Anna arrived at my residence 4 days later without contacting first. I opened the door to see her standing on my porch, unhappy. "Can we talk?" I invited her in, and made tea as she sat at my kitchen table. Maya was napping upstairs. The house was silent save for the kettle's whistle. Anna put her hands around her mug and murmured, "I've been a coward. I watched them treat you like garbage, and said nothing because I was scared. I chose my trust fund and Dad's approval over my sister. I'm sorry." The apology had a different impact than my parents' attempts at reconciliation. Anna's voice shook with genuine regret. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying before her arrival. I sat opposite from her and inquired, "Why now? What has changed for you?" She shook her head. "I watched you walk out of that restaurant. You were so forceful and clear about what you deserved. I realized I've been weak my entire life. I've let Dad control everything because it's easier than standing up to him. But it's cost me you. And it's cost Maya her relationship with her aunt." We spoke for 2 hours. She informed me about life in the family after I left. Ryan had become more strict, in an attempt to be the perfect son to fill the void I had left. My parents spoke about me in clinical terms, as if I were a problem that could be fixed by letting go. How the holidays felt hollow in my absence. She cried, as she described seeing Maya through mutual friends' social media posts. Knowing she had missed the first 18 months of her niece's existence, because she was too terrified to defy our parents. I asked her what she wanted now, and she said, "Honestly, I want my sister back. I want to know Maya. I want to stop being the person who chose money and approval over love. I know I don't deserve it after standing by for 4 years, but I'm asking anyway." I looked at this woman who'd been my closest friend growing up, who'd abandoned me when I needed her, and who was now asking for a chance I wasn't sure I could give. Maya began crying upstairs. I went to retrieve her, and when I returned with my kid on my hip, Anna's face crumpled. "She looks like you did at that age." I let Anna hold Maya and observed my sister's cautious kindness with this niece she was meeting for the first time. Maya looked at Anna with the same distrust that toddlers have of strangers. But she did not cry. After a few minutes, she reached for Anna's jewelry, and Anna giggled, which I hadn't heard in years. I advised her, "If you want back in, it has to be real. You can't disappear again if Dad gets angry. You can't choose their approval over showing up for Maya. She deserves better than conditional family." Anna looked at Maya and nodded. "I understand. I'll prove I'm serious for as long as it takes." She began coming over every Sunday afternoon. At first, I kept a close eye on her, watching for signals that she'd return to the safety of our parents' approval. But she kept turning up, bringing age-appropriate toys, learning Maya's routine and preferences, and inquiring about my life with genuine curiosity. We slowly and gently rebuilt trust. My parents' attempts to reunite persisted. My father sent flowers with a card that said, "Family forgives." I returned them with a message that stated, "Family doesn't abandon." My mother called regularly until I blocked her number. They arrived at Robert and Linda's restaurant one evening, evidently hoping to run into us. But Robert gently informed them that we were not present, and that they were not welcome to wait. The attempted manipulation via numerous avenues was taxing. Ryan contacted after 6 weeks of radio silence from me. He said that our parents were hurt and puzzled by my failure to reconcile, that they had made a sincere attempt, and that I was being stubborn. I inquired if he remembered refusing to lend me money after David was hurt. The stillness on his end was prolonged. Finally, he stated that it was different. Dad had stated his position clearly. I told him that was exactly the issue. Our parents' positions had always been more important than our relationships, and I was tired of living with conditional affection. David's business continued to grow. He was awarded a contract for a new medical building that would take 8 months and employ 15 people. The irony was not lost on us. My father attempted to undermine David's career, but instead pushed him to become more cautious, professional, and driven. Obstacles had made him stronger. David recruited a company manager and a qualified accountant, relocated to a larger office, and began rejecting down lesser tasks to focus on larger projects. Success felt sweeter, because we earned it despite the sabotage, not because of familial ties. Year 5 of our marriage brought unexpected changes. Ramon had a health scare that landed him in the hospital for 1 week. David and I visited on a daily basis, along with what seemed to be his entire extended family. Ramon's relatives were always present in the waiting room, bringing food, telling stories, and supporting Linda through her worries. My parents never visited anyone in the hospital unless it was socially necessary. The contrast and how these two families operated couldn't have been more obvious. Robert recovered and redoubled his charitable efforts. Linda joked that she had created a monster, but her eyes shone with pride. I learned more about their history during those weeks, how Robert worked 3 jobs while growing his business, how Linda began cooking for elderly neighbors and grew it into a charity that now serves thousands, how they gave back to the community that provided them with opportunities. Their riches was enormous, yet they wore it softly, emphasizing impact over appearance. My mother arrived at my place unexpectedly one Saturday morning. David was on a job site. Maya and I were preparing pancakes when the doorbell rang. I answered the door, and there she was. Well-dressed and meticulously made up, but visibly uneasy. "I need to talk to you," she said. I almost shut the door, but something about her expression stopped me. I invited her in, but did not provide coffee or comfort. She sat at my kitchen table as Maya ate pancakes with serious focus, dripping syrup everywhere. My mother looked at her granddaughter with an emotion that I couldn't read. Finally, she continued. "I've been going to therapy. Your father doesn't know. I've been working through some things about my own parents, and how they raised me, about class and value, and what I was taught to prioritize." She paused, watching Maya attempt to use her fork properly. "I was educated that some people were more important than others, that appearances and social standing trumped character. I taught you the same things." I waited, unwilling to make things easy for her. She said, "I met David's parents properly last month, had lunch with Linda at her charity, and she showed me what they do, the families they aid, the lives they've touched, and I realized I'd been so focused on Robert and Linda's appearance on paper, that I never recognized who they really were. I never bothered to learn, and I did the same thing with David, judging him based on preconceptions and prejudices, without ever giving him a chance." Maya finished her pancakes and hopped out of her chair, strolling over to her toy box. My mother noticed her movements and murmured, "She's beautiful. I've missed so much." Her voice cracked at the final syllable. I said, "Yes, you have by choice." She nodded, tears streaming down her nicely made-up face. I know it was my choice. Your father's choice. And we were wrong. I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here to apologize for cutting you off. For forcing you to choose. For missing these years with you and Maya. And for teaching you that love was conditional when it should have been unconditional." I inquired what she wanted from this meeting, and she looked at Maya, who was playing with blocks on the floor, and said, "I want to know my granddaughter. I want to make amends for the rift I created with you. I want to be better than I was or was raised to be. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I'm asking for a chance to prove I've changed." I told her I needed time to think about it, and discuss it with David, which she accepted. She asked if she could hug Maya goodbye, but I told her no, because Maya didn't know her and I wouldn't confuse her with strangers claiming to be family. I sat on the floor with my daughter and cried while she patted my face, trying to comfort me in the way that toddlers do when they sense distress. David came home to find me still on the floor, Maya napping against my shoulder. And I told him about my mother's visit, watching him process it. After a lengthy pause, he continued. It's your family, your decision. I will back whatever you pick. But I need to know they will not hurt you, or Maya again. If we open this door, they must fully respect our boundaries. Anna arrived that evening, and I informed her about our mother's visit. She wasn't surprised. Mom's been different recently, more contemplative, and less bothered about what others say. I'm not sure if it's the therapy, age, or true guilt. Maybe all three. I asked if Dad was changing as well. Anna shook her head. Dad is still Dad. He's trying to figure out why his money and contacts didn't help, but I don't believe he completely understands what he did wrong other than miscalculating David's family's standing. We decided to meet with both of my parents. But this time at Robert and Linda's house on our territory, with our support system present. The symbolism was not subtle, but it was important. My parents would have to enter a space that represented the family they had rejected, and they would have to interact with Robert and Linda as equals, not as charity cases or social climbers. The meeting was scheduled for the following Sunday afternoon, and that week felt interminable. I practiced what I wanted to say. David prepared for a possible confrontation. Linda prepared enough food to feed 20 people. Even though only 8 would be there, and Ramon made sure his English was impeccable, refusing to give my father any reason to dismiss him. The tension in everyone's preparations was palpable. Sunday arrived, sunny and warm, and my parents arrived exactly on time, my father's expression carefully neutral, my mother visibly nervous. Linda greeted them at the door with graciousness that put me to shame, offering refreshments, showing them to the living room, and making small talk about the weather. As we sat in Ramon and Linda's comfortable living room, surrounded by family photos and evidence of a life well lived, my father looked around with an expression that could have been appreciation or assessment. Ramon shook my father's hand firmly, not deferentially, but not aggressively, and they established themselves as hosts, not supplicants. My mother focused on Maya, who was playing with blocks in the corner, overseen by Eva, and the hush lasted until David stated, "We're here to set ground rules. If you want to be a part of Sophie and Maya's lives again, here's how you do it." He laid out our criteria, which included a full apology, and an acknowledgement of particular harms. My father's face darkened with each point David made, and when he was finished, he said, "These seem excessive. We are willing to recognize that mistakes were made on both sides." Ramon spoke for the first time, his accent careful but his words clear. No mistakes on both sides. Only one side made errors. My son married your daughter in love and respect. You replied with rejection and cruelty. That is all. The room was silent. My father looked at Ramon as if he had been slapped, and Ramon said, "You want to repair now that you know we are succeeding. But we were successful previously. You didn't want to know. You made a judgment without knowing," Linda continued. "In our culture, family is everything. We would never forsake a child who chose love. This isn't typical. This is unacceptable. If you want to be a part of Maya's life, you must acknowledge that you failed your daughter. Completely failed her. And you must do better." My mother was silently crying. My father's jaw worked like he was grinding his teeth. And Ryan and Anna, who had come as witnesses, were uncomfortable. I found my voice. Everything David listed is non-negotiable. These are the basic prerequisites for admission to my family. You'll apologize explicitly for cutting me off, damaging David's business, returning my unopened letters, and missing Maya's birth. You'll admit you were incorrect without qualifier or explanation. You will treat Ramon and Linda as equals, not based on their nationality, language, or anything else. And you'll show that you've changed by taking continuous action over months. One slip, one condescending comment, one attempt at control, and we're done forever. My father stood up. I won't be dictated to by my own daughter, or lectured by people who don't understand our family dynamics. He walked for the door. My mother stood but didn't accompany him. She looked at me and said, "I accept your terms. All of them. I will perform the work. I'll earn my way back." She stared at my father. "With or without you." His reaction was almost hilarious. My father looked at her as if he didn't know her. "Ella Lanner, we're leaving." She shook her head. "No, you're leaving. I am staying. I'm meeting my granddaughter properly. I apologize to my daughter and her spouse. I am learning to be better than I was raised to be. You can join me or not. But I'm done putting your pride ahead of our children. Her posture had changed. She'd been brittle when she arrived. But now she stood taller and more solid. My father looked around the room at everyone watching him, at Ramon and Linda, who'd maintained firm boundaries, and at David, who hadn't backed down. He stood there for a long time, then sat back down hard. What precisely do you want me to say? The following 3 hours were both painful and necessary. My father struggled to apologize without defending himself. My mother cried through her apology, but did not make excuses. David shared how the sabotage had affected his business and his sense of safety. I discussed the isolation and grief of being cut off. And Ramon and Linda shared their own experiences with family betrayal and forgiveness. By the end, my parents had agreed to family therapy and individual therapy for my father. They had acknowledged specific harms and apologized without qualification, and they had committed to demonstrating that they had changed through their actions. My mother begged if she might hold Maya, and I said yes, watching my daughter gingerly enter her grandmother's arms. Maya inspected my mother's face intently before touching her cheek, a comforting gesture she'd learned from me. My mother broke down entirely, and the weeks that followed were tentative. My parents came to Ramon and Linda's house for Sunday dinners, fitting into the established routine rather than demanding separate accommodations. My father was stiff at first, uncomfortable with the casual warmth and multilingual chaos of David's extended family. But he showed up, listened more than he talked, and observed how Ramon and Linda interacted with their children and grandchildren with obvious affection and no conditions. My mother took to Maya with a gentleness that surprised me. She asked permission before giving gifts, followed bedtimes and routines, accepted correction when she overstepped, and faithfully attended therapy, sharing insights she was learning about her own upbringing and the prejudices she'd internalized. Slowly, very slowly, I began to believe that the change was real. Ryan remained distant, loyal to the family structure that benefited him. But Anna fully integrated into our lives, becoming the Aunt Maya deserved. She brought her own daughter to play dates and family dinners, raising her child differently than we'd been raised, and creating something better from the wreckage of our family patterns. A year after the confrontation in Ramon and Linda's living room, my father approached me at a Sunday dinner. We stood in the backyard while kids played, and adults talked inside. He looked older, tired, but somehow more real. I was wrong, he said. Not just about David or his family, but about everything. About calculating people's worth using their bank accounts and family names. About treating love like a transaction that required clearance. About cutting you off when you made a choice I didn't understand. I waited for the caveat, the justification. But none came. He continued. I missed 4 years of your life, Maya's early years. I'll never get that back. And it was entirely my fault. Not yours or David's. His voice broke slightly. I'm grateful you gave me another chance. More appreciative than I can describe. I'm trying to be better. To be the father you deserved all along. I hugged him, the first physical contact we'd had in 5 years. He held me closely, shivering with grief or relief. David's business grew into one of the most respected contracting firms in the city. My father, in an effort to make amends, recommended David for projects through his business connections, but always disclosed the relationship and let David's work speak for itself. David appreciated the referrals, but never relied on them, preserving the independence that defined his success. Maya grew up surrounded by 2 families who loved her completely. She learned Spanish from Ramon and Linda, practical skills from David, and compassion from witnessing her grandmother's transformation. She never knew a time when her maternal grandparents weren't present. But she grew up hearing the story of how family can be lost and rebuilt through accountability and change. Years later, at Maya's 8th birthday party, I witnessed my father conversing with Ramon, 2 men who had once been adversaries but had become friends thanks to the bridge their children had built. My mother played with Maya, truly present in a way she had never been with me as a child. Anna's daughter and Maya ran through the yard like sisters. David stood with his crew, men who had become loyal employees because he treated them with dignity and paid them fairly. Linda came to stand by me and watch the celebration. You did good, she murmured in her meticulous English. You stayed strong when it was difficult. You demanded respect. You built something beautiful from something broken. I leaned against her, this woman who'd accepted me after my own mother had rejected me. We all did, I whispered. All of us together. She gripped my hand. Yes, each of us. That is what family implies. The past could not be undone. The 4 years of desertion and pain would remain part of our story. But we had created something better on the other side. A family that prioritized character above connections. That judged value through kindness rather than bank accounts. That knew that belonging was won via presence and respect, rather than compelled through obligation or blood. My parents realized too late that the family they had rejected was exactly what they needed. And we'd discovered that knowing what you deserve, and refusing to accept less, can be the most powerful thing you can do. Thank you for staying till the end. When my sister's fake cancer lie unraveled, she tried to destroy me. I exposed her lies and watched her world collapse. I exposed my sister's lies, and saw her life fall apart after she staged cancer to undermine my top 10 college goals. She is crying at my door 2 years later, and asks if we will ever be sisters again. My sister was prepared to ruin everything, including herself, in order to surpass me. I always made an effort to be best friends with Emily, my older sister, when I was growing up. I based my entire wardrobe purchase on her appearance. Additionally, I would start a hobby whenever she did. However, she began to view me as her greatest adversary rather than as my best friend. When she would return home with a running, dancing, or other hobby award, I would imitate her. The first person she told was me. She would then wave the award in my face, and ask, "Bet you couldn't do this, could you?" Instead of crying or becoming envious, I would give her a tight hug and express my happiness for her. However, this only made her more irate, and she would push me away. At times, it was so intense that my whole body would drop to the ground. However, I didn't give up until my 14th birthday, when our parents gave me a pink, glittery bike that Emily had always desired. I hurried to her room and knocked on her door as soon as I opened the package. I asked her if she wanted to be the first to ride it after bringing her into the back garden and showing her what I had. "Sure," she replied, grinning broadly. She told me she wanted to ride it on the road, and since she was 17, I assumed she was old enough to do so safely. However, she didn't sit in the seat. Instead, she made eye contact with me and tossed it into the open road, where it was destroyed by a passing truck. My childhood came to an end when my heart broke. I made a commitment to never share with her my accomplishments or, for that matter, any updates on my life. Since Emily hadn't left for college yet, she overheard my parents discussing my second-place finish at the regional cross-country championships when I was 15. To my surprise, though, she asked to attend my awards ceremony rather than freaking out. I firmly believed that she was attempting to mend our friendship, so I enthusiastically agreed. The coach announced the winners on the big day, ranking them from lowest to highest. However, he never yelled my name because Emily abruptly fell to the ground before he could. Everyone turned to look at my family and inquire about her well-being. It wasn't until you could hear the ambulance sirens outside that she woke up again. "Oh, sorry, everyone," she said, startling everyone. "I just didn't eat enough food today." Everyone expressed their amazement at her well-being. All I did was roll my eyes. From that point on, I essentially concealed everything from my parents, sister, and my entire family. It undoubtedly made life more lonely, and it was difficult to resist the urge to run to my parents when I received good news. Then, at the age of 17, I was admitted to one of the top 10 universities. Before I did, my parents discovered the acceptance letter. As soon as I arrived home, my mother exclaimed, "Honey, we are so proud of you." They immediately began snapping numerous photos of me holding my acceptance letter to post on their social media accounts. And I allowed them to be pleased for me for the first time in years. I reasoned that there was nothing Emily could do to ruin it. Once more, though, I was mistaken because when I woke up the following day, my parents had stormed into my room and thrown everything I owned into black bin bags. My dad was crying, and my mom's voice was trembling when she said, "Your sister has just been diagnosed with stage 2 ovarian cancer. She'll need one room for her stuff and one to sleep in." I could tell right away that she was acting. All I needed was some kind of proof. Later that day, Emily grinned as she returned home. It's funny because I had seen a picture of her hair blowing in the wind on her story only a few months prior, and now she was completely bald. She did, however, lie down and sleep. Claimed that the cancer was wearing her out. I lured her into a state of delusional security by cooking her favorite meal that evening. I slept on the couch for 2 weeks before Emily threw a party to honor her own bravery. She invited some of the girls from my class as well as everyone we knew. Excellent. I used a fork to tap on my Fanta glass halfway through. She instantly recited a speech that I had heard her rehearse dozens of times in the bathroom mirror. "Emily, make a speech. We're so proud of you." I approached her and gave her a hug while she was in the middle of her fake tears. And I peeled off the bald cap as I was about to pull away. She had blonde hair that fell to her waist. Emily let out a scream. I thought my mother's lungs were going to burst from the force of her gasp. I put the TV on full volume, while everyone processed what was happening. I played a video I had taken of Emily rehearsing her speech in front of the mirror while she believed no one was watching. She stormed out of the house and drove off, refusing to confront her lies at last. I let my parents take care of bidding farewell to everyone as I went upstairs to my room. My mother slapped me across the face. When I woke up the following morning, I just looked at her, my cheek burning, and asked, "How could you have embarrassed Emily like that while she's battling with cancer?" According to my mother, Emily told them that I had torn out her hair extensions, saying that she had spent thousands on realistic ones so that people wouldn't feel sorry for her because she was bald. By acknowledging that she could afford such pricey extensions, she didn't want to show off her wealth. My parents believed that story, which surprised me. They firmly believed that I had brutally revealed their daughter's cancerous hair extensions. The bounce in my step, attracting interested glances from students who were walking by. My recordings were gone when I got home that Friday. Each and every gadget had disappeared from its hiding places. There was nothing in the drawer beneath my desk. The outlines of dust indicate the locations of the recorders. My closet's box was empty. I couldn't even find the backup USB drives I had stashed in an old shoe. With her legs tucked under her, Emily was reading a magazine on the couch as if nothing had happened. Her fingers turned the pages of the magazine, one of those celebrity gossip rags, languidly. She didn't even look up from her reading when I asked her about them, claiming she had no idea what I was talking about. She sounded innocent, as if she had practiced this particular moment. The cloud backups were still there, but I was now suspicious. I changed all of my passwords that evening and enabled two-factor authentication. In case she gained access to those accounts as well, I even made dummy accounts with fictitious evidence. As I constructed layer after layer of digital protection, my fingers slid across the keyboard. I created security questions and password managers using information that only I would know, allusions to books Emily had never read, and locations she had never visited. Helen showed up Saturday morning looking worried and carrying a casserole. Her gray hair was freshly styled, and she wore her fine pearls, the ones she saved for special occasions. She gave Emily a hug and complimented her on her bravery, saying that her acting was on par with any performance I had ever seen. Emily raved about her treatment and how difficult everything was. At the appropriate times, she even succeeded in making her voice tremble. I bit my tongue so hard, I tasted copper as I watched from the kitchen. The casserole was still warm and smelled like comfort food from my childhood that I couldn't get. Later, after I had given my room to Emily, Helen asked to see it so she could help me reorganize. It was a cunning justification that would not arouse suspicion. I showed her everything on my phone when we were by ourselves. The timeline of lies I had painstakingly recorded. The screenshots, the recordings. Context and cross-references were added to each piece of evidence. Her jaw tightened as she heard Emily's cruel laughter, and her face darkened with every piece of evidence. When she learned that Emily was going to steal my college acceptance letter, she had to sit on my bed. We went over everything for an hour. Helen pointed out discrepancies that I had overlooked, such as Emily's claims that she had chemotherapy every Monday but was never ill on Tuesdays, or the fact that her medical records all shared the same watermark pattern despite supposedly coming from different offices. She demonstrated to me how the fonts and margins matched exactly. She even saw that the medical jargon was a little strange, as if someone had looked up terms online instead of copying them from actual documents. Her eye for genuine medical documentation was honed over the years she worked at a law firm that handled medical malpractice cases. Helen claimed to have spoken with my parents, but we needed to plan ahead. They would become defensive and shut down entirely if we were too forceful. When people were emotionally invested in a lie, confrontation could backfire, as she had witnessed with her own siblings. She recommended holding off until dinner, when everyone would be more at ease. With my stomach roiling with anxiety, I agreed, despite the fact that waiting felt impossible. Helping Mom in the kitchen and listening to Dad's work stories, we spent the afternoon acting as though nothing had changed. Emily was performing at her best during dinner. She sighed about how the treatment had reduced her appetite as she pushed food around her plate. Cutting the chicken into tiny pieces for maximum impact, she had taken precisely 3 tiny bites. My mother leaped up from the table and offered to make her something else right away. With a heartfelt voice, Dad rubbed her shoulder and remarked on how strong she was. With all the fake sympathy, the dining room felt oppressive. Helen began casually. She inquired about Emily's course of treatment and the hospital she was visiting. She asked in a conversational tone, as if she were inquiring about the weather. Regarding privacy and her desire to avoid overloading everyone with information, Emily provided evasive responses. Helen persisted a bit longer, adding that she might be able to get assistance from a friend who worked as an oncologist. She even took out her phone as if she were prepared to connect at that very moment. Emily dabbed at fake tears to hide the twitch in her eye. Although her team was taking care of everything, she said she was grateful for the offer. Emily's chair scraped loudly on the floor as she had to use the restroom right after Helen asked for the oncologist's name so she could send a thank you card. Playing up her weakness, she walked slowly while supporting herself with one hand by following the wall. Helen glanced at my parents while she was gone. She inquired as to whether they had truly attended any appointments with Emily. Emily stated that she needed to be independent, so my mother acknowledged that they hadn't. She twisted her napkin in her lap with an embarrassed expression. Emily was shielding them from the harsh reality. Dad continued. He clenched his hands on the table. He didn't even know he was carrying tension, as evidenced by the whitened knuckles. Helen showed them my proof and took out her phone. They initially turned their heads away like kids avoiding veggies because they didn't want to look. Helen persisted, methodically going over every screenshot and recording. She arranged them in a polished and convincing presentation. When my mother heard Emily laughing about tricking them, her face turned white and her hand went to her mouth. In 30 seconds, Dad's face changed from incredulity to horror to anger. When Emily returned, we were all staring at her. The grandfather clock in the hallway was the only sound to break the deafening silence. She burst into tears as soon as she heard that we were banding together against a cancer patient. She accused me of using AI to fake the recordings when that failed. Then, as her lies grew more desperate and outrageous, she claimed that I had given her drugs to force her to say those things. A house of cards collapsing in real time. Each new excuse ran counter to the previous one. The weight shift caused my dad's chair to creak as he slowly got to his feet. He asked her directly if she had cancer. He had caught me smuggling cookies, and his voice sounded just like it did when I was younger. Emily tried crying again, but he simply asked the same question in a firm, steady voice. At last, she blew up. She yelled that we all admired my accomplishments more than she did and that my foolish college acceptance had captured her parents' interest. Years of bitterness spilled out of her mouth. The truth erupted in a torrent. She acknowledged that she was lying about everything, but blamed us for making her feel invisible. I received all the credit for imitating her, even though she had been the older sister for years. Her face twisted with years of repressed anger. She claimed that the only time she felt strong was when she destroyed my bike. She even acknowledged minor details that I had never suspected. Concealing my library materials to avoid penalties. Telling embarrassing lies about me to students at school. My essays are being removed from the family computer. My mother began to cry. She heard deep, shuddering noises that rocked her entire body. Dad had to grab the edge of the table and sit back down as if his legs gave out. The wood moaned as he held it. In case Emily later attempted to refute the confession, Helen captured the entire exchange on her phone. As I watched my family disintegrate, I felt numb, as if I were floating above the scene. In the middle of such devastation, the unfinished food on the table seemed ridiculous. But Emily wasn't finished. Screaming that I had ruined everything, she lunged at me. When my mother attempted to step in between us, her fingernail snagged her arm. When blood trickled down Mom's wrist, everyone's astonishment was finally broken. Like tiny roses, the red drops spread out when they hit the white tablecloth. Mom seemed unable to understand what had happened as she gazed at her arm. Dad took hold of Emily and yanked her away. She was wailing and yelling about how much she detested me, how my birth had stolen her life, and how all of my accomplishments had served to defame her. Her voice was raw and primal, releasing years of anger in one terrifying outburst. Sensing the mayhem through the walls, the neighbor's dog began to bark. As Dad held Emily, Helen dialed 911. Her legal education kept her focused as she delivered the speech in a composed manner. The paramedics arrived to take my mom's arm. But they also took Emily. They were concerned that she might injure herself because she had worked herself into such a state. Her voice reverberated down our quiet street as she continued to scream that this was all my fault as they led her away. Neighbors looked through curtains as porch lights flickered on. After that, the house felt deserted. Mom required antibiotics and sutures. Although the scratches were deep, the doctor said they would heal without any problems. They efficiently and gently cleaned and bandaged her arm. Dad silently drove her home. The car engine's hum is the only sound. We were all at a loss for words. As we pulled into our driveway, the streetlights caught the hospital bracelet on Mom's wrist. My parents sat me down to apologize that evening. They claimed that the cancer story had shocked them. They never questioned it. They ultimately enabled their daughter's lies because they wanted to help their ill daughter. When Mom mentioned slapping me, she sobbed and gently touched my cheek. It was a tender, remorseful gesture, very different from that day. Not to offend them, but to let them know that this wasn't new. I told them about everything Emily had done over the years. The staff at the library knew me by name, and coffee became my best friend. After being observed for 3 days, Emily returned home. Twice a week, she had to go to therapy. According to the therapist, she displayed antisocial traits and symptoms of narcissistic personality disorder. She set reasonable expectations by warning us that it would take years of work to address. She handed us leaflets on enabling behaviors and family dynamics. Without saying sorry, she returned to her previous room. We made unseen barriers in our common areas by avoiding one another entirely. She had looked right through me as if I weren't there when we passed in the hallway. That was okay with me. Years ago, I had given up on ever having a sister. The house seemed to be divided into two distinct worlds that coexisted under one roof. She was still attempting to harm me. Though, one day, I saw her going through my college documents in my room. She claimed she was only borrowing a pen when I confronted her. However, I saw that she had been squeezing my acceptance letter, as it was crumpled. The official seal was irreparably wrinkled. My skin crawled at the invasion of my personal space. That evening, I put a lock on my door. My parents understood the need without my having to explain, so they didn't object. They understood that while Emily dealt with her problems, we needed boundaries. Mom even tested each deadbolt's strength before helping me choose a strong one from the hardware store. That lock's click turned into a sound of security. The months that followed were tense. On good days, Emily would help with the dishes and laugh at TV shows, appearing almost normal. She would then experience setbacks where her anger returned. Recovery wasn't linear, as her therapist cautioned us. In addition to being patient, we had to defend ourselves. Family meals turned into workouts and cautious maneuvers. I began storing everything significant in a safe. Every night, my laptop, papers, and even sentimental objects went inside. I couldn't risk another attempt at sabotage, even though it felt extreme. I was able to concentrate on my studies because of the safety. My birthday, which Emily had always hated, was the combination. It was like taking back something just by picking those numbers. My acceptance was finally confirmed by the college. The admissions board acknowledged my candor and said they understood the circumstances. They even provided tools for coping with trauma in the family. Reading that email made me cry. Waves of relief swept over me. My future was safe once more. The way ahead is obvious. I allowed myself to get excited when prom season arrived. My friend Ben asked me to go as friends after I found a lovely dress on sale. It was nice to have something routine to anticipate. I even noticed that I was humming as I worked on my homework. Happiness from the past is returning. Like a promise of a single ideal evening, the dress hung in my closet. I was applying makeup on prom night when I heard a crash. My dress was on the ground, covered in what appeared to be bleach. The cloth was ruined. The blue material was covered in large white patches. Emily's bathroom door closed the hallway with a click. My nose was burned by the chemical odor. I felt the excitement ebbing away as I stood there in my slip, gazing at the ruined dress. Instead of screaming, I called Nancy instead. Bringing her daughter's old prom dress, she drove over. Although it was green rather than blue, it fit flawlessly. I tried not to cry while Nancy did my hair. She meant it when she said I looked lovely. She gently pinned each curl with her hands. As if she had anticipated my need for rescue, she even carried matching jewelry in her purse. No one seemed to mind that my dress wasn't what I had planned for prom. Ben and I danced until our feet ached. I forgot about Emily and the mayhem at home for several hours. I simply got to celebrate with my friends like any other adolescent. Silver streamers and sparkling lights transformed the gym. We replaced the staged smiles and family portraits with real ones in dozens of pictures. Emily was in the living room when I arrived home. Her expression darkened as she glanced at the green dress. She had been waiting for me to cry over the ruined dress, I realized. She hurried off to her room, clearly disappointed, when I grinned and said, "I had an amazing night." Her attempt to harm me had, for once, completely failed. Her therapist scheduled a family meeting for the following week. Emily had confessed to the dress incident and multiple other acts of sabotage, she said. In order for Emily to concentrate on healing without distractions, the therapist suggested a more rigorous program, possibly residential treatment. She clarified that the existing strategy wasn't operating quickly enough. My parents felt conflicted. They were concerned about sending Emily away even though they wanted to help her. The therapist clarified that everyone needed time apart to heal at times. She handed them brochures, glossy pages full of recovery promises, for a number of programs that focused on personality disorders. Testimonials from families who had found serenity through separation were displayed in each facility. I heard my parents fighting that evening. Dad felt they had let Emily down by not seeing this sooner, but Mom wanted to try the residential program. Regarding who was at fault, they argued back and forth. I tried to concentrate on my homework while wearing headphones. Calculus problems are hazy through my tears. Even through my music, their raised voices could be heard. Emily must have heard them too, because she declared the following day that she would attend treatment. She expressed that she was sick of constantly feeling angry. She didn't appear to be planning anything. For the first time in years, she appeared truly worn out. Her eyes were shadowed by dark circles. Something hollow seemed to have taken the place of the fight in her. The next Monday, we took her to the facility by car. It was 2 hours away, encircled by gardens and mountains. The employees appeared to be firm but kind. They clarified that family therapy sessions would take place once a month for at least 9 months. The structure appeared less like a hospital and more like a retreat. In the parking lot, other families were bidding farewell, each with a burdensome tale to tell. Emily ignored me and gave our parents a farewell hug. That was fine with me. A tearful reconciliation wasn't necessary for me. All I wanted was for her to get assistance and stop bothering me. I watched the facility vanish in the rearview mirror as we drove away, feeling lighter than I had in years. The mountains appeared serene, as if they could contain and change all of our family's suffering. Without her, the house was quiet. I spread out my belongings fearlessly and returned to my room. During our quiet dinners, my parents and I had genuine conversations. With genuine interest in my responses, Mom began to inquire about my day once more. On some nights, we even played board games and rediscovered how to function as a 3-person family. I threw myself into the activities of my senior year. I began tutoring underclassmen in math and joined the yearbook committee. Now that I was accepted to college, I could finally enjoy my time in high school. I had to practice everything twice because of him. Nancy hosted a farewell party for me that included all of my favorite foods. Before I left for school, the treatment center called to discuss a special family session. Emily had something significant to share, they said. On a Saturday, we drove up. The summer growth had turned the mountains green. The structure no longer seemed so intimidating. In the garden areas, family members sat and conversed quietly. Emily appeared healthier in the session room. Her skin had returned to its natural color, and she had put on weight. Her hands trembled a little as she read from a piece of paper. It was a sincere apology. She described particular instances and admitted how they had wounded me. Every memory, the dress, the laptop, the bike was scrutinized. She claimed to have been diagnosed with borderline traits and narcissistic personality disorder. That was an explanation rather than an excuse. She was learning how to control her feelings without causing harm to other people. As she talked, the therapist gave her a supportive nod. We all sat in silence for a while after she was done. She was not forgiven by me. The therapist said that was all right, but I thanked her for the apology and added, I hope treatment kept helping. That was all I could give right then. It was impossible to rush or coerce forgiveness. Everybody had a different healing timeline. We went to a local cafe for lunch. Emily arrived under a staff member's supervision. She did eat the soup that she had ordered. We discussed safe subjects like the weather and movies. I showed her the email when she inquired about my roommate assignment. According to her Facebook profile, the girl seemed pleasant. It was a quiet drive home. In the front seat, my parents continued to look at each other. Mom concluded by saying that they were pleased with my self-management and that I had demonstrated maturity beyond my years. I owed Emily nothing. Dad continued. Whatever my feelings were, they were legitimate. I was packing 2 weeks prior to college when I discovered something odd. In my desk drawer is a small, wrapped box. A necklace featuring my birthstone was inside. Emily had ordered it from the craft program at the treatment facility. According to the receipt, I stared for a long time at a small note that read, For your new beginning. I packed it, but I never wore it. I might or might not do so in the future. Even though I wasn't quite ready to accept it, the gesture had some significance. I carefully wrapped it in tissue paper before putting it in my jewelry box. Little steps led to progress. The day of move-in was chaotic. Dad refused to let anyone else carry anything until his back began to ache. My room in the dorm was rearranged 3 times by Mom, Chloe, my roommate, and her parents looked on in amusement. Our room felt like home, even though by the evening it looked like a Bed Bath & Beyond explosion. It was more difficult than anticipated to say goodbye. The parking lot was where Mom ugly sobbed. Dad continued to check the car tires and clear his throat. I committed to texting every day and calling once a week. Before I did, Nancy sent a care package, which arrived first. Tea, cookies, and a note expressing her pride. College fulfilled all of my expectations. Classes are challenging but fascinating. Pizza fueled late-night study sessions. My roommate and I bonded over the awful food in the dining hall, and we became good friends. I made more friends when I joined the running club. I felt free because no one was aware of my family's drama. I felt strange missing the first family therapy session. After that, Mom called to tell me everything. Emily was doing well, assuming accountability on her own initiative. She had begun assisting the younger residents with their first adjustments. It was referred to as significant progress by the therapist. I was happy to be far away, but I was also relieved. Over Thanksgiving break, I returned home. The house seemed calmer and different. In addition to hosting game nights with friends, my parents had redecorated a few rooms. They appeared lighter and happier, as though they had been holding their breath for years before finally letting it out. Mom prepared enough food to feed 20 people. For Thanksgiving dinner, Emily was permitted to have a home visit under supervision. She appeared anxious as she entered. Conversation began slowly as we all sat at the table acting like strangers posing as family. She seemed genuinely interested in my major in biology and inquired about my classes. No disparaging or competitive remarks. She assisted with plate clearing after dinner without being asked. Emily asked if she could say something when her mother brought out the pie. She expressed gratitude to us for persevering in her. Stated that, although it was difficult, she was determined to improve, even though she was aware that she had caused us great suffering. Dad grabbed her hand and gave it a squeeze. The visit felt like progress, but she returned to treatment that evening. I waved from the porch, but I didn't give her a final hug. Little steps. Healing wasn't linear. According to the therapist. Even though there would be good and bad days, at least we were making progress. More changes occurred during winter break. Emily transferred to a transitional housing program after completing the first phase of treatment. She began taking online classes at a community college, and found a part-time job at a bookstore. She seemed to benefit from the structure. She had to live up to expectations and the rules. The therapist discussed reintegration during another family session. Emily could visit more frequently, have dinner once a week, and attend family gatherings with notice, but she wouldn't move home immediately, possibly never. Boundaries were necessary for everyone to feel secure. We were assisted in writing them down by the therapist. I returned to college with a cautious sense of optimism. During Parents' Weekend, my parents came to visit and got to know all of my friends. Mom took pictures of everything, including my messy dorm room, which made me feel ashamed. My college sweatshirt was worn everywhere by Dad. They appeared content, incredibly joyful. No longer pushing it. The spring semester went by quickly. I received an invitation to join the honors program after making the dean's list. The letter was framed by my parents. Nancy sent flowers as a token of appreciation. Emily even texted to express her pride. Every accomplishment felt completely mine now. There isn't a shadow over it. Not worried about reprisals. When I returned home over spring break, I discovered Emily had been there multiple times. Dinners were going well, according to my parents. She was practicing emotional control and accepting responsibility in therapy. Her work ethic was praised by the manager of the bookstore. Little triumphs, but still victories. When Mom gave updates, she spoke in an impartial tone. That Wednesday, we had dinner together. I told Emily about my research internship when she inquired about my summer plans. She inquired about the project and said that sounded impressive. Genuine inquiries rather than searching for vulnerabilities to take advantage of. She said I'd do great when I mentioned that I was nervous. The dinner ended quietly. She thanked her mother for cooking and assisted with loading the dishwasher. Said farewell without being strange. My parents gave me a hopeful look after she left. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad either, so I said it was fine. Fine was sufficient at times. More stability arrived with summer. I immersed myself in my research and thoroughly enjoyed it. During their visit to the lab, my parents attempted to comprehend my protein folding project. Emily maintained her employment and continued her therapy. Every other week, we gathered for family dinners. With practice, conversation became easier. She asked if we could speak in private one evening. Like when we were kids, we sat on the back porch. She acknowledged that she couldn't return the years she had stolen from me, but she still wanted to improve moving forward. I told her I was grateful, but it would take time, possibly forever, to earn her trust. I understand, she said. We had one last family session before the sophomore year began. Emily had made great strides, according to the therapist, but she would require continued assistance. She was able to control her reactions and identify her triggers. Although the personality disorder would never go away, she had control over how it affected other people. Everyone had put in a lot of effort to get here. I felt at home when I returned to college. Even though my family wasn't flawless, it was healing. Emily occasionally sent texts with everyday content, such as songs she enjoyed or books she had read. When I felt like it, I answered. No pressure in either case. We were discovering a new rhythm that suited everyone. The sophomore year presented both new possibilities and challenges. I formally announced my major and began working with a professor on my research. Every week, my parents called to give me updates. Emily was doing well and attending more classes. In her therapy group, Baby Steps Toward a Normal Life, she had made some friends. Emily had her own apartment, a studio close to the bookshop, when I returned home for winter break. She actually prepared the dinner when she invited us over. Nobody objected to the overcooked pasta. She proudly showed us her space. Everything is tidy and well organized, demonstrating a new beginning. We awkwardly exchanged Christmas gifts. I received a gift card to my favorite store from her. Secure and useful. For her therapy work, I got her a journal. We tried, but it was safe, too. That made a difference. Mom snapped pictures of us seated on the couch. Not friendly, but not at all at ease. The remainder of the break went smoothly. Family dinners went off without a hitch. Emily showed up at my high school friend's party and acted appropriately. Even Ben's awful jokes made her laugh. We both responded that our relationship was complex but getting better when someone inquired about it. It felt sincere. One afternoon, I assisted her in moving some furniture. We were alone in her apartment. We worked silently while she turned on some music. After we were done, we sat on her new couch while she made tea. She said that even though she knew she didn't deserve the chance, she was thankful that I was giving it to her. I told her about my classes and friends from college. She listened without comparison or interruption. She offered to help when I mentioned that I was having trouble with organic chemistry. It turned out that she had successfully completed it at a community college. We reviewed my notes for an hour. She gave clear explanations and was patient. I informed my parents about the tutoring that evening. They looked at each other in surprise. Mom thought that was fantastic. My father reminded me to set limits. I acknowledged that, but if everyone remained healthy, perhaps boundaries could gradually change to allow for greater connection. Flexibility was crucial, according to the therapist. The spring semester got off to a fresh start. I texted Emily about her homework in chemistry. She sent practice problems and videos that were helpful. I received $. Math room. B+. $. Instead of a C. She said that helping me felt good, as if she was making a positive contribution, and I thanked her. We established a routine for once. Monthly video calls to review challenging concepts and weekly texts about school. She never insisted on making more contact than I did. She didn't feel guilty when I didn't reply for a few days. Instead, she waited until I was ready. It felt important that boundaries were respected. Our relationship had stabilized by the end of my sophomore year. Functional but not close. We could converse without ulterior motives and share space without conflict. She attended my academic awards ceremony and gave me a sincere clap. Just support, no drama or scene. I studied abroad in Spain that summer. Emily gave me travel advice and assisted me with packing. Before everything fell apart, she had spent a semester overseas. Her advice on staying at home and dealing with culture shock worked well. At the airport, we said our goodbyes with hugs. Real, but brief. Mom shed tears of joy. Everyone, including Emily, received postcards from me. She later told me that she had saved them in a box. She wanted to see pictures and hear stories when I returned. She inquired about the research I had conducted there, recalled specifics from earlier discussions, behaving for once like a typical sister. With graduate school applications imminent, junior year arrived. Emily offered to edit my personal statements. I agreed after hesitating. She offered insightful criticism without attempting to undermine anything. Even found a few typos that I had overlooked. She assisted me in practicing for interviews. Helpful and constructive. She had changed over the years of therapy. Not into an ideal person, but into someone who could work without hurting other people. She still had occasional jealousy issues. When I told her good news, I would see glimmers of the former Emily, but she would correct herself and apologize. Real change requires real work. She was truly thrilled for me when the acceptance letters began to come in. No fictitious mysterious illnesses or cancer diagnoses. Just congrats and inquiries about the program I should enroll in. When the time came, she even offered to help me move. I was grateful for the offer, but I said we'd see. In preparation for the future, senior year went by quickly. Emily attended the graduation without drawing attention to herself. I sat with my parents and applauded when it was appropriate. Gave me a card with a sincere message expressing pride in my achievements and took pictures when requested. In fact, I thought she meant it. We spent more time together that summer than we had in years. She drove me to IKEA for furniture, assisted me in finding an apartment in my new city, and put together bookcases without complaining. At times, we even chuckled. No forced or premeditated laughter, just spontaneous responses to amusing situations. She asked if we could become real sisters someday the night before I moved. Not right now, but later. I said perhaps that I wanted to think it was possible, but I couldn't promise anything, after enough time had passed and trust had been restored. That was fair, more than she truly deserved, she said. Together, we loaded the moving truck. My parents are trying to hide their emotions. Emily is helpful and realistic. She gave me a framed picture of us as children before everything went wrong as a small gift after everything had been packed. We both smiled at the camera, sisters who had no idea what lay ahead. I hung it in my new apartment so it was visible, but not overt. A reminder that forgiveness was achievable even if it took years, that people could change, and that families could recover from severe trauma. I would look at the picture while studying because it was facing my desk, two young girls who were not given what they deserved. These days, Emily and I text frequently, not every day, but consistently. She tells me about her classes and job. I tell graduate school stories. On the ashes of what was destroyed, we are constructing something new. Despite its imperfections and fragility, it belongs to us. Perhaps that's sufficient for now. I can see how far we've all come when I look back. Years of therapy, work, pain, and growth have followed that awful party where I took off her bald cap. My parents are getting better at seeing. Emily is learning how to live without causing destruction. I'm learning how to defend myself while remaining receptive to new possibilities. Our family isn't what it could have been. There is too much damage for that. However, we are the family that we have chosen to be. Healing but scarred. Cautious, but optimistic. The only thing anyone can do is to take things one day at a time. And that's sufficient for now. My brother-in-law tried to humiliate me, but his jaw dropped when he discovered my real identity as his CEO. I smiled, then exposed his massive debt. In crowd. I almost dropped my pen when my phone rang, and lit up with a message from my mother, while I was halfway through signing a vendor contract. Don't attend Thanksgiving this year. Rachel. You create tension, according to Jake. You'd be better off ignoring this one. I assumed it was a prank for a while. After maybe a month of getting to know me. My sister's new husband had already concluded that I was the issue. If only he was aware, but rather of retaliating. I put my phone face down, turned to face my assistant, and said coolly, "Let's reschedule this meeting to tomorrow." I don't yell or quarrel when someone tries to push me away. I shift. I'm Rachel Bennett. A 28-year-old director at Summit View Realty and the youngest woman to oversee a division valued at over $300 million. However, no one in my family is aware of my true activities. They believe I work in real estate, as if I sell modest homes on the weekends. Years ago, I gave up trying to describe my existence. The message from my mother wasn't new. Simply put, it was the loudest version to date. Emily, my sister, has always been the bright spot, the favorite, and the person whose decisions are valued highly. Even though I worked non-stop and was quiet, I was said to be doing my best. Her new husband Jake, however, was different. A man who desired to be the center of attention. That example, the type who boasted about his recent promotion from customer service to team lead. The type of person who measured others as if he needed to feel taller. Apparently, I was too nervous to sit with him at the same table. I wasn't upset. I was unharmed. I was finished. I didn't want to waste time trying to convince people who didn't care to understand me. My life was too huge, too full, and too heavy. I stayed late that night at work to complete project numbers, sign approvals, and run simulations for the building of the new executive tower that we were going to showcase. The job was amazing. It was the only location where I felt totally in charge. I felt nothing but clarity as I strolled across the deserted lobby at midnight, my heels resonating against the marble floors. It's okay if Jake didn't want me to attend Thanksgiving. He simply didn't realize that I had a life apart from my family. He had no idea that universe would be so much larger than his own. The following morning began as every other, swiftly, sharply, and noisily. Emails are flooding in, phones are ringing, and architects are requesting last-minute confirmations. Sophie, my assistant, gave me a fresh pile of documents. The Skyline Project's contractor, Rachel, is going behind schedule, keys. However, she halted. Her eyes widened. I froze for a moment when I turned. Then I nearly burst out laughing. Red-faced, sweating, and utterly shocked, Jake stood in the doorway. His eyes darted between me and the enormous corporate logo behind my desk as if someone had pushed him in. He wavered. What is this? He appeared to have entered a nightmare as I reclined in my leather chair, totally at ease. He must have come with the intention of intimidating, or frightening me. Rather, he discovered my actual place of employment. Who I was in reality. Jake. Good morning, I said nonchalantly. Do you work here? His voice cracked as he yelled. What are you? You are in charge. I arched an eyebrow. I am in charge of 3 divisions. Thus, the answer is yes. That makes me the boss, I guess. What brings you here? He appeared on the verge of fainting. I came to discuss an investment meeting with someone. I thought you worked in rentals. But Emily said her sister might be able to help. There it was, the verdict striking him in the face. I remained motionless. Be calm, gathered. It was he who trembled. I said, you told my mom that I shouldn't attend Thanksgiving. I wrecked the ambiance with my tone, even if it was firm. The color faded from his cheeks. I didn't say I didn't know, Rachel. I had no idea what I was asking. That I was employed. That I was alive. That I wasn't a failure. That you could ignore. He took a deep breath while continuing to gaze at the glass wall behind me. The one that depicted every employee on the floor working under my direction. One brick at a time, I could almost feel his ego crumbling. He waved a trembling finger at me. I gave him the tiniest smile and asked, why? Why didn't you tell anyone you were this? No one asked. He blinked, unable to speak. Without making a sound, his mouth opened, closed, and then opened again. Should I call security? Sophie whispered to me as she entered behind him, but I dismissed her. Jake posed no danger. All he was a man who had misjudged someone. I didn't come here for this, he said while massaging his forehead. I interrupted him with a raised hand, saying, I came because we need a loan and investor. Emily said you might convince someone to give us. Jake. Let me make something very clear. I don't mix family with business. And I don't help people who belittle me. He looked at me like I had turned everything upside down. You can't do this, he yelled out of nowhere. Oh, the timeless question. Do you know who I am? I got to my feet slowly and methodically. Powerful, not angry. Yes, I said. His jaw tightened as he said, you're the man who tried to keep me out of Thanksgiving. I suppose you weren't prepared. I went on to say that you are now pleading inside the office, where the person you attempted to cut out would be sitting. He fell mute, stuck in place. Then all of a sudden he shouted. Just an angry shout. No words. The type you release when the world you created falls apart in front of you. Everybody on the floor looked. I didn't even flinch as he pointed at me and said, You embarrass me. His face turned blazing crimson. No, I murmured quietly. You embarrassed yourself. He stormed out, slamming the door so forcefully that the glass shook. After a moment, Sophie stepped back in. "Well," she uttered with wide eyes. That was dramatic. Since he believed the humiliation ended here, I finally let out a breath and remarked, "You have no idea. And this is only the beginning." He didn't know what was going to happen next. Retaliation based on the facts, not rage. And the truth is always more powerful. The energy on the floor changed when Jake bounded out of my office. Everyone had witnessed what had transpired. Yet people pretended to continue working. A grown man yelling like a child in the middle of a business building is not something you can really hide. I didn't go after him. I didn't have to. Instead, I allowed my heartbeat to calm before moving to the glass wall that overlooked downtown. Ego was not the issue here. Clarity was the key here. At last, Jake saw the side of me he had assumed was absent. He detested independence, power, and stability. My phone buzzed 15 minutes later. "Emily." Even though I thought about ignoring it, I responded. She spoke sharply. "Rachel, what did you do to Jake?" "He just came home furious." I didn't speak louder. I didn't do anything. "He showed up at my workplace without an appointment, yelled in front of my staff, and demanded money." Silence fell. Emily didn't anticipate such a composed response. Then she lost her temper. "You could have been nicer." It nearly made me giggle. "He told Mom I shouldn't come to Thanksgiving. That's because he thinks you judge people. You have this intimidating vibe." I shut my eyes. The irony hurt. "Emily," I murmured. "Maybe he feels intimidated because he underestimates everyone around him." She didn't answer. Instead, she hung up. After a moment, I came to a realization. I wasn't rejected by my family because I was problematic. I outgrew the version of myself they were comfortable with. Thus they rejected me. All right. Life had more ambitious intentions. So they could keep their miniature version of me. Sophie entered the room with a hefty envelope that evening, as I was wrapping up my evaluation of the final renderings for the Skyline project. "This came through a private courier," she explained. "It's from legal." I took it open. There was a heading on the file. "Jake Thompson background report. Requested. Not by you." I raised my eyebrows. I said, "Who requested this?" Sophie paused. The courier said, "Your mother." I gave a blink. The same person who told me I wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving was my mother. It was a growing suspicion, not hurt, that made my heart constrict. I stopped cold after skimming the file. Jake had numerous obligations, including personal loans, past credit card failures, and a failing computer firm that he conveniently never disclosed. Even worse, he had just used Emily's name to apply for a private investment loan. I took a slow seat. So that's why he showed up at my office. Because he didn't want me close to my own family, in case they discovered he was taking advantage of them. He didn't want me there for Thanksgiving. The worst thing wasn't even that. My mother wrote a comment in unsteady handwriting at the bottom of the report. I didn't know who else to ask. "If he hurts Emily financially, please protect her." It hit me right away. It wasn't my mother's intention to push me away. She was defending Jake. Or more accurately, shielding my sister from what she thought he would do if I confronted him. Something sharper and a weird kind of grief raced through me. I was still not trusted by them. Too little to speak with me directly. They trusted me enough to investigate Jake behind his back, but not enough to seek for assistance in public. And they had enough faith in me to expect me to take action. Slowly, I closed the file. All right. They would get exactly what they wanted if they wanted me to skip Thanksgiving. I picked up my coat, walked out of the office, and made my way directly to Jake and Emily's house. The one place this needed to finish. He believed that shouting in my office was the worst thing he had ever experienced. Therefore he didn't struggle, yelled, or tried to finish this. When he opened that front door, he had no idea what was in store for him. I parked outside Emily and Jake's house as the sun was sinking. The windows were illuminated with warm lighting. On the outside, it appeared serene. Excellent. My mother had always hoped Emily would lead such a life. Nice future, nice house, and nice hubby. Unfortunately, none of it was authentic. I carried a file under my arm as I made my way up the driveway. The door opened before I could knock. You can't be here," Jake said, blocking the doorway with his full body as he stood there, breathing heavily and his eyes enlarging the moment he spotted me. I quietly grinned. "Move." I lifted the envelope a little since he didn't. His face suddenly lost color as he said, Unless you want Emily to open this instead of me. His voice cracked as he questioned. What? What is that? Your past. I answered back. Or should I say, your present? His eyes flashed with alarm as he took a step back. He knew exactly what was in that folder. Therefore, it wasn't because of me. Without waiting for permission, I entered. Emily was stirring something on the stove in the kitchen. Rachel, what are you? She asked, freezing at the sight of me. I was hurried past by Jake, who said, Brit, don't listen to her. She's trying to create problems. She wasn't foolish though. What did you do? She muttered after glancing at his face. The folder was placed on the dining table by me. Mom sent this. Emily jerked her head in my direction and said, Mom? Yep. She's the one who hired someone to dig into him. Jake's voice broke. She hates me. No, I clarified. She didn't trust what you were hiding. Emily's hands were shaking as she reached for the folder. Jake sprang forward. Don't open that. With my voice cutting through the room, I moved between them. Touch her again, and I walk out of this house and deliver this file to her employer, her bank, and every investor you've approached. Jake came to a complete halt. Emily pulled out the packet. The ensuing hush was oppressive. Loans, defaults, failing businesses, additional debts, and his application for a private investment loan under her name are listed on page after page. In a whisper, she said, Jake, tell me this isn't true. Desperate, he raised a hand. Emily, listen, baby. I just needed help for us, for our future. No, she answered in a trembling voice. For your mess. His eyes were blazing with rage as he turned to face me. You planned this. You want to ruin my life. I remained motionless. You ruined your own life when you tried to drag my family into your debt. His chest rose as if he wanted to shout once more, and he tightened his fists. However, Emily moved ahead of me as a fierceness began to emerge within her. Get out of my house, she said to him. He stopped. What? You heard me. Leave. He appeared truly afraid for the first time. But where will I go? Her words. That's not my problem. It was his final attempt. Your mom will hate you for this. No. Emily said in a whisper. She'll finally understand why Rachel didn't come to Thanksgiving. He slammed the door behind him and stormed away. With tears on the verge of falling, Emily turned to face me. Why didn't you tell us who you really are? What you really do? I let out a sigh. Because you never asked. At that moment, she sobbed and leaned into me. As someone who is suddenly realizing the truth. Not as my sister, who always had it everything. Then she whispered. Stay for dinner? I gave a nod. Yeah, I'm here. But tomorrow was going to be the real moment of revenge. And it wouldn't be loud. It would be unforgettable. The bitter holiday chill that normally felt pleasant arrived on Thanksgiving morning. However, it brought something fresh this year. Strength, clarity, and a feeling that everything was at last falling into place. I put on a basic navy suit, pulled my hair back, and picked up the folder my mom had provided. Not to reveal Jake. That was finished. I had another motive for bringing it. I had to tell my family the truth, not in rumors or conjecture. The aroma of food wafted from the open windows as I parked into my mother's driveway. There was laughter coming from within. It was the same old, familiar sound, but this time the door swung open before I could knock as soon as I stepped onto the porch. With her eyes wide and her breath seizing in her chest, my mother stood there. She muttered, Rachel, as if she wasn't certain I was who I claimed to be. Calmly. I heard you didn't expect me. I replied. Her voice cracked. I didn't know what to do. Jake. He said you two didn't get along and Emily seemed happy and you believed him. I completed the task for her. With a look of guilt on her face, she closed her eyes. I'm sorry. I didn't want the day to turn into an argument. Once the common she had always feared that. Conflict, neither truth, nor safety, just conflict. But fighting wasn't the theme of the day. Gently, I know, I murmured. That's why I'm here. Despite her perplexed expression, she moved aside to allow me to enter. There were voices in the warm house. However, everyone fell silent as soon as they spotted me. Emily left the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel, and my aunt muttered, I thought she wasn't coming. She appeared clearer and stronger today. To the surprise of everyone, including Mom, she came right up to me and gave me a strong hug. She told me everything, Emily murmured quietly. Mom's gaze flitted between us. Everything? I gave the packet to her. You hired someone to look into Jake, I responded. You were worried. Mom opened it cautiously and said, "So here, this is everything you asked for, but you don't have to worry anymore." As she read the first page, her hand shook. She muttered in horror. What was he planning to do with Emily's name? Sign her into debt to fix his past mistakes, Emily said on my behalf. The crowd was filled with gasps as the speaker said, he admitted it when Rachel confronted him. Mom put a palm to her chest, her feelings showing. Oh my God, Rachel. I should have listened to you. I should have trusted you. I gave a headshake. You should trust yourself. You knew something was wrong. You just didn't want to make the wrong choice. She moved in closer, tears welling up in her eyes, and I decided to ignore you. This was the part I had been looking forward to. Just honesty. Neither retaliation nor satisfaction. I'm not angry, I muttered, but don't cut me out to protect someone else again. Especially someone who doesn't protect you. After not hugging me for years, she drew me into a tight embrace. Her words, "You're staying for dinner," were firm. No more excuses. I grinned. I planned to. Emily laughed and called out from the living room. Warm laughter filled the room as someone said, "Mom's about to burn the turkey again. The real kind. Real at last." I didn't feel alienated for the first time in a long time. I felt like the protector, the sister, the daughter, and the one who came through when it counted. And I came to a realization as we sat around the table, plates full, voices raised. The confrontation wasn't the retaliation. Jake wasn't being exposed. I wasn't trying to prove myself. Being content was the true form of retaliation. In the exact spot where they once believed I didn't belong.